Bonker Studio Production.
Welcome and thank you for joining today's audiobook experience. In this empowering listen, we dive into the Gifts of Imperfection by Dr. Brené Brown, a heartfelt guide to living wholeheartedly, embracing vulnerability and letting go of the need for perfection. If you've ever struggled with self-worth, comparison, or the pressure to meet impossible standards, this book is for you. So get comfortable, open your heart, and allow this audiobook to remind you you are enough just as you are. If you enjoy today's reading, feel free to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a little encouragement. Let's begin the journey inward. Embracing our own story and loving ourselves through the journey is one of the most courageous acts we'll ever take. Once you recognize a pattern in your life, it's impossible to ignore. Trust me, I've fought it. But when the same truth keeps showing up, pretending it's just random stops working. Take my sleep habits. No matter how much I argue that 6 hours is enough, anything less than 8 leaves me cranky, wired, and raiding the pantry for snacks. Classic pattern. And let's not even talk about my procrastination routine. Suddenly, deep cleaning my entire apartment and splurging on fancy planners becomes urgent right when a deadline looms. Every single time. Our brains are wired to spot patterns and assign meaning to them. It's what makes us human. And for better or worse, my brain is practically a pattern detection machine. Years of training turned it into my job. As a researcher, I study human behavior to uncover the hidden links and rhythms that shape how we think, act, and feel. It's fascinating work, except when the patterns hit too close to home. For years, I reserved my denial for personal blind spots, the kind I'd rather shrug off. But in November 2006, my own research blindsided me. For the first time, I wanted to unsee what I'd discovered. Up until then, my focus was on tough emotions, shame, fear, vulnerability. I'd written papers, built programs for therapists, even published a book on shame resilience. But as I gathered thousands of stories, from people aged 18 to 87 from all walks of life, new patterns emerged. Sure, shame and not enough fears were everywhere. But so were stories of people living boldly, embracing flaws and finding strength in vulnerability. They spoke about joy and gratitude like they were lifelines, and things I dismissed, rest, play, were just as crucial as diet and workouts. Their honesty about love, belonging, and authenticity stunned me. One afternoon, I grabbed a Sharpie and labeled a file with the word that summed it all up: wholehearted. The tone shifts here, because let's be real, nothing shakes you like realizing your life's work just called you out. But here's the twist, that discomfort. It's where the good stuff begins at first. I didn't fully grasp the meaning, but I sensed these stories were about people embracing life and love with everything they had. Wholeheartedness fascinated me. What did these people truly value? How did they build such unshakable resilience? What kept them up at night, and how did they handle it? Could anyone live this way? What did it take to grow what we needed, and what stood in our way? As I dug deeper, patterns emerged, and for simplicity, I split them into 2 categories: do and don't. The do list overflowed with words like worthiness, joy, trust, gratitude, and authenticity. The don't list, heavy with perfectionism, exhaustion, judgment, and the exhausting chase of cool. The contrast hit me like a gut punch. I actually stumbled back, muttering, "No way, this can't be right." Here's the irony: I wrote those words, yet seeing them laid out stunned me. When I analyze data, I'm all researcher, detached, focused only on what the stories reveal, not my own biases. But sitting at my kitchen table, staring at those lists, I felt like I'd been handed a verdict. My eyes darted between the columns, my throat tight, fingers pressed to my lips like I'd just heard a tragedy. And in a way, I had. I'd assumed wholehearted people were just like me, rule followers, perfectionists, parenting by the book, always striving to fix themselves. After years studying shame, I thought I'd earned a gold star for doing life right. But the truth was humbling, even brutal. Self-awareness matters, but self-love matters more. Knowledge is useless without kindness. Wholehearted living isn't about control. It's about embracing the messy, tender parts of ourselves. And the hardest truth: we can't give our kids what we don't have. That realization didn't just sting, it stole the air from my lungs. New detail. I remember the morning light hitting the lists, making the words belonging and scarcity glow as if the universe was underlining the lesson. Shift in tone. From stunned disbelief to wry self-awareness. Oh, the irony. Here I was, a shame researcher, blindsided by my own blind spots. Turns out, even experts need a wake-up call. Our ability to parent with courage and authenticity depends far more on where we are in our own personal growth than any parenting manual could ever teach us. That dreary November afternoon, as I sat staring at my scribbled notes, I realized my heart wasn't in the right place, not even close. Frustrated, I snatched my marker, slashed a line under the "don't" column, and defiantly wrote me beneath it. The list wasn't just a reminder of my failures, it was me. I slumped into my chair, arms crossed, thinking, well, this is fantastic. I've officially become my own worst checklist. For the next 20 minutes, I paced my house, trying to shake off the weight of what I'd just confronted. But the words clung to me like ink stains. No amount of pretending could erase them. So I did the only thing I could. I folded those poster sheets into crisp squares and buried them in a plastic bin under my bed, right beside the holiday wrapping paper. That tub wouldn't see daylight again for over a year. Therapy became my next step. Deanna, my no-nonsense therapist, who, ironically, specializes in counseling other therapists, still chuckles about our first session. I marched in, slapped my due list on the table, and deadpanned, I need more of this. Practical tips only. No deep dives into my childhood, thanks. What followed was a year I now call my 2007 Breakdown Spiritual Awakening Tour, equal parts meltdown and revelation. Diana insisted it was the latter. I was convinced it was the former. Turns out, we were both right. Breakdowns and awakenings are two sides of the same coin. And let's be real, November 2006 was the perfect storm for a personal implosion. Fresh off quitting sugar and flour, emotionally frayed from work burnout, and teetering on the edge of my midlife unraveling, because let's stop calling it a crisis. It's more like the universe yanking off your life's autopilot. Midlife isn't about losing your mind. It's about finally listening to your soul. But this isn't the only unraveling we face. Life throws them at us like pop quizzes. Marriage, divorce, parenthood, grief, soul-crushing jobs, each one demanding we shed who we're supposed to be for who we are. The universe has a knack for blaring wake-up calls. Most of us just stuff cotton in our ears. My journey, messy, necessary. And as it turned out, the best damn thing that ever happened to me. The journey was grueling, but one afternoon, covered in dirt with my boots still soaked from the trail, it hit me. Something inside had shifted. A spark of joy flickered where fear used to sit. I wasn't just surviving. I was alive, truly alive, in a way I'd never been before. The anxiety that once ruled me had quieted, replaced by a quiet strength. My creativity roared back to life, my relationships deepened, and for the first time I wasn't at war with myself. Gone were the days of people-pleasing and endless apologies. Instead of muttering "sure" through gritted teeth, I learned the power of no, and the even bigger power of hell yes. No more waiting for some mythical future version of myself to show up. Diana's guidance led me through stacks of memoirs, each one a stepping stone, but I kept craving something more, a roadmap, not just stories. Then, staring at the leaning tower of books on my nightstand, the idea struck. I could write that roadmap myself. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the once skeptical academic, now knee-deep in journals about gratitude and grace, happier than I'd ever thought possible. Before the memoir, though, I needed to pour everything into a guide, Wholehearted, a name that fit like it had been waiting for me. By 2008, my research had overflowed into bins of notes, interviews, and scribbled revelations. But the real turning point, that November day when the truth smacked me in the face, I hadn't been living fully. Just seeing the list wasn't enough. I had to choose to believe, through doubt and tears and tiny victories, that a different life was possible. Now I know, embracing your story, flaws and all, is the bravest act there is. Wholeheartedness isn't some finish line, it's chasing a star, always moving, always shining, just out of reach but lighting the way. New detail. The moment of clarity came not just from the books, but from a sudden downpour during a hike, the rain washing away the last of my resistance. Voice twist. From earnest self-discovery to wry humor. Who knew I'd become the person I used to side-eye at yoga retreats? Life isn't about reaching a final destination. It's about knowing you're moving forward, step by step. I've learned that qualities like bravery, kindness, and deep relationships only grow stronger when we use them daily. The 10 guideposts in this journey aren't just tasks to complete. They're lifelong practices, woven into the fabric of who we are. For me, faith came before clarity. Once I believed, I could finally see the real power we have to transform ourselves and the world around us. All it takes is the guts to love and live fully, without holding back. And honestly, it's a privilege to walk this path alongside you. A heartfelt thank you to the incredible people who have shaped this journey. Patricia Brote, Corinne Casey, Corinne Cherniev, Kate Crow, April Dahl, Rhonda Deering, Sid Farrar, Margarita Flores, Corinne Holmes, Charles Kiley, Polly Cox, Sean Ostrowski, Cole Schweikart, Joni Shoemaker, Dave Spone, Diana Storms, Ashley Thill, Sue Thill, Allison Vandenberg, Yolanda Villarreal, Jolynn Worley, my Movabody crew, my family, and the Love Bombers. Living wholeheartedly starts with believing you're worthy, right here, right now. It's waking up and thinking, even if today's a mess, I'm enough. It's ending the day knowing, yeah, I've got flaws and fears, but that doesn't cancel out my strength or my right to love and belong. Here's the thing. Wholeheartedness isn't a checkbox. It's a daily grind, a lifelong adventure. My mission: to map out the choices that lead there and pass on the wisdom from folks who have poured their hearts into this work. Before we dive in, let's talk gear. What do you pack for a trip like this? How do you make peace with imperfection? How do you ditch what's weighing you down? The answer's simple: courage, compassion, and connection, your trusty toolkit for the road ahead. Now if you're rolling your eyes thinking, cool, so I just need a cape and a theme song, I get it. These sound like superhero traits, but truth, they're more like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they get. And here's the kicker: our stumbles and scars. They're the reason we get to flex these tools every single day. That's the magic. Our imperfections turn these into gifts. So buckle up. The real work starts now. The opening chapter dives into the core principles of courage, compassion, and connection, essential tools for building a deep sense of worthiness. Once we've got a solid grasp on these foundations, the following chapter shifts focus to the real heart of the matter: love, belonging, and what it truly means to feel worthy. Here, I tackle some of the toughest questions I've faced in my work, like whether love can coexist with betrayal, why our desperate need to fit in often ruins genuine belonging, and if it's possible to love others more than we love ourselves. We also dig into why so many of us chase worthiness instead of simply believing we already have it. Of course, no journey is without its roadblocks, and the path to wholehearted living is no different. Later, we'll break down the biggest obstacles that keep us from living and loving fully, plus practical ways to push past them and build resilience. From there, we'll walk through the 10 guideposts that light the way, each one packed with real-life stories, thought-provoking quotes, and hands-on strategies for making intentional choices in how we live and connect. Now, let's talk definitions. Words like love, belonging, and authenticity get thrown around all the time, but what do they really mean? I wanted to cut through the fluff and give these concepts clear, usable explanations, ones that reflect real experiences, not just vague ideals. Sometimes that meant crafting entirely new definitions like I did with love, while other times existing research perfectly captured what I was hearing, like Dr. Stuart Brown's brilliant work on play, which became a cornerstone of wholehearted living. Sure, definitions can spark debate, but that's the point. I'd much rather argue over the meaning of words that matter than let them go unexamined. After all, shared language is how we build understanding, and that's what makes wholehearted living possible. Added detail. A surprising moment during research. One participant described love as showing up with coffee when someone's too exhausted to ask, which reshaped how I thought about everyday acts of connection. Tone shift from analytical to wry, because nothing says belonging like debating dictionary definitions over burnt toast at 2 a.m., right? But hey, at least we're talking about it. Back in 2008, when my blog was still finding its footing, I wrote a post about finally burning out my dig deep reflex. You know that survival mode we all have. The one that kicks in when you're running on fumes but still drag yourself out of bed at 3 a.m. for the third time, or power through another mountain of laundry after a stomach flu hits the house. That relentless drive to keep going no matter what, even when every fiber of your being wants to flip the world off and burrow under a weighted blanket. I decided then that I wouldn't just patch up that overused button. Instead, I promised myself I'd pause when I hit empty, no more white-knuckling my way through exhaustion. For a while it worked, until I realized I missed having something to pull me back up. I needed a better shovel, not just brute force. So I dove back into my research, hunting for a way to dig that aligned with living wholeheartedly, something beyond gritted teeth and caffeine. Here's the game changer. People who live wholeheartedly do dig deep, just differently. When drained, they get deliberate, pausing to breathe, pray, or set intentions instead of autopilot chaos. Inspired, choosing curiosity over obligation. What could feel good right now? Going, moving, even if it's tiny, like closing the laptop instead of doom scrolling. Take last week. I was zombified by the internet, mindlessly refreshing social media like a hamster on a wheel. Not relaxing, not useful, just a vortex of wasted time. So I tried the new dig method. I asked, is this actually fueling me? If not, what would? Then I shut my laptop, whispered a quick reminder to be kind to myself, and finally watched that movie gathering dust on my shelf. No guilt, no shoulds, just intentional restoration. Now each chapter of my work includes a dig deep prompt, not to bulldoze through life, but to choose deliberately, act inspired, and move toward what matters. I'll share my tricks, but yours might look totally different. Maybe yours involves salsa dancing or silent hiking. The point: digging deep isn't about suffering harder, it's about living smarter. Added twist: the Netflix envelope detail, a nostalgic touch for the pre-streaming era, adds humor while grounding the scene in a relatable, time-specific struggle. These fresh approaches have proven far more impactful than the old grin and bear it mentality. What I bring to the table: this book dives deep into transformative themes, self-kindness, embracing reality, and finding joy in the little things. Let's be real. I'm not breaking new ground here, nor am I the sharpest mind or smoothest wordsmith. But what sets this apart is how I connect these ideas to build a life of authenticity, wholehearted living. More crucially, I'm the first to tackle them through the lens of someone who spent years knee-deep in the messy, uncomfortable world of shame and fear. There were days I nearly walked away from this research. Studying topics that make people squirm isn't exactly glamorous. More than once I've tossed my notes in the air and groaned, I'm done. Why not study something fun like happiness or success? Funny enough, I didn't pick shame, it picked me. Now I get it. Those grueling years were boot camp for this work. We can wax poetic about bravery and love all day, but if we're not honest about why we struggle to live them out, nothing changes. Ever. Take courage, sure, it sounds inspiring until you realize it means not caring what others think. Cue the panic, compassion. Everyone wants it, but are we ready to set boundaries, even if it means letting someone down? And belonging, it starts with embracing ourselves. So why does that feel like climbing Everest in flip-flops? Before putting pen to paper, I ask, why does this book matter? Turns out my biggest contribution isn't just ideas. It's the gritty, unglamorous truth I've learned studying shame. Knowing how those nagging voices, "You're not enough, who do you think you are?" hold us back lets me offer more than inspiration. It's a roadmap for real change. If I could time travel to my past self, drowning in data and self-doubt, I'd say what I'll tell you now. Yes, owning your story is tough, but nothing's harder than a lifetime spent hiding from it. New detail. Imagine me in my cramped office, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups, muttering to myself as I wrestle with yet another research paper, only for my dog to trot in and drop a squeaky toy at my feet, as if to say, "Lighten up." Sometimes the universe sends reminders in furry packages. Tone shift from heavy introspection to wry humor, because let's face it, if we don't laugh at our own resistance, we'll cry. Opening ourselves up to vulnerability feels risky, but shutting ourselves off from love, belonging, and joy, the very things that expose us the most, is far more dangerous. True strength comes from facing our fears head-on, because only by stepping into the unknown can we uncover the brilliance within us. Building self-worth isn't about perfection. It's about daily acts of courage, kindness, and reaching out. And let's be real, none of this happens overnight. As theologian Mary Dolly put it, courage isn't something you just have, it's something you do. You don't learn to swim by reading about it, you jump in the water. Compassion and connection work the same way. They grow when we choose to show up, even when it's messy. Now let me tell you about the time I walked into what felt like a parental showdown disguised as a school event. A principal and president had invited me to speak about resilience and boundaries, right up my alley since I was deep into research on wholehearted parenting. But the second I stepped into that auditorium, the energy was off. Parents were shifting in their seats, exchanging tense glances. I asked the principal what was up, but she just brushed me off with a shrug. The president wasn't any more helpful. I figured maybe I was just overthinking it, until the introduction started. Picture this, a principal booming into the mic like she was announcing a heavyweight title fight. "Buckle up, folks. Dr. Brown's here to drop some truth bombs whether you're ready or not." I half expected a fog machine and a hype man. Instead of the usual awkward but polite rundown of my credentials, she made it sound like I was about to stage a hostile takeover of their school. In that moment, I wished I'd had the guts to stop everything and say, "Whoa, who hurt y'all? I'm just here to chat." But no, I defaulted to my usual nervous charm, stumbling through my talk while silently praying I wouldn't get booed off stage. Turns out, the parents had been in a heated debate about school policies before I arrived, and my talk got framed as some kind of intervention. Talk about walking into a minefield. But here's the twist. By the end, a few parents actually thanked me, not because I fixed anything, but because I'd been honest about my own struggles. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is show up as we are, even when the room feels ready to riot. The moment I stepped into that room, I knew I was in trouble. The parents weren't just unimpressed, they were downright hostile. Front and center sat a guy who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, arms crossed, jaw clenched so hard I could practically hear his molars grinding. Every few minutes, he'd let out this exaggerated sigh, more like a theatrical groan, so loud it made the woman beside him flinch. Even the people who weren't glaring at me were now glaring at him, caught between annoyance at his antics and lingering disapproval of whatever I'd supposedly done wrong. Now I've dealt with my fair share of tough crowds, classrooms full of skeptical teens, boardrooms of executives who'd rather be anywhere else. But this was next level, and instead of sticking to my usual calm, collected approach, I panicked. I cranked up the volume, threw in some doom and gloom stats about childhood literacy rates, basically turned into a motivational speaker on steroids. Listen up, or your kid's future will be a cautionary tale. Spoiler: it didn't work. Not a single nod, not even an eye twitch. Just 250 increasingly irritated parents now convinced I was a walking public service announcement. By the time I bolted for the parking lot, my face was on fire, my heart hammering like I'd just sprinted a mile. The shame spiral hit fast. Why did I do that? Who turns a parenting seminar into a horror story? But at least I recognized it this time. Shame's got a playbook. Dry mouth, tunnel vision, that awful loop of should've, could've, would've replaying in your head. The irony. The best way to shut it down is the last thing you want to do: talk about it. Not to just anyone, but to someone who'll actually listen without judgment. Because shame thrives in silence, but it withers under a little honesty and a lot of courage. Added detail. On the drive home, I nearly missed my exit, too busy replaying the moment I dramatically waved a whiteboard marker like it was a magic wand. Real subtle. Tone shift. And let's be real, nothing says professional educator like accidentally turning a school meeting into an episode of Black Mirror. Lesson learned: never try to outgrump a grump. Just hand them a coffee and back away slowly. Shame thrives in silence. It withers when exposed. The moment we try to bury our pain, it grows stronger, like a shadow stretching in the wrong light. I remember the exact second I realized I couldn't hold it in anymore. My voice cracked as I muttered to myself, "Brené, pick up the phone. Do it now." But here's the brutal truth. Not everyone deserves your story. Sure, I've got plenty of people I can grab coffee with, but when shame hits, only a few can handle the weight of it without dropping it, or worse, throwing it back at me. Choose wrong, and suddenly you're not just dealing with your own mess, you're dodging their emotional shrapnel too. You need someone steady, unshakable, like an oak in a hurricane. Let's talk about who not to call. The horror show friend, the one who gasps, clutches their pearls, and leaves you sitting in awkward silence. Now you're comforting them. Thanks, but no thanks. The sympathy robot, "Oh honey, you poor thing." Translation: I'm uncomfortable, so here's some pity to shut this down. Bonus points if they hit you with the Southern classic, "Bless your heart." Which, let's be real, is just "wow, you're dumb" with a sweet tea veneer. The disappointed perfectionist, they didn't sign up for this version of you, the flawed, messy one. Now they're side-eyeing you like you kicked their puppy. The fixer, "It wasn't that bad, you're amazing." Read, "Please stop being human, it's stressing me out." The one-upper, "You think that's bad? Let me tell you about my real disaster." Look, we've all been that friend at some point, especially when someone's pain pokes at our own unhealed junk. But when you're drowning in shame, you don't need a life raft full of holes. You need someone who can sit in the dark with you without flinching. Someone who's earned the right to your truth. For me, that's my sister. Funny how it took a full-blown breakdown, or as I like to call it, my spiritual awakening tour 2007, to realize family could be my anchor. But when the storm hits, you don't call the person with the prettiest umbrella. You call the one who won't let go. Growing up, I was the oldest sibling, 4 years ahead of my brother and 8 years older than my twin sisters. Back then, I wore my role like a badge of honor, convinced that being the perfect older sister meant being strict, judgmental, and always in control. But then Ashley came along and flipped that script. She didn't just listen, she got it. Instead of offering empty reassurances or cliches, she met my messy emotions with raw honesty. I've been there," she'd say, wincing like she could actually feel my struggle. "That feeling is the worst. It wasn't polished advice, but it was exactly what I needed, someone who wasn't afraid to sit in the discomfort with me. Here's the thing. Ashley didn't try to rescue me or scold me. She just showed up, flaws and all, and let me do the same. And in that space of total honesty, where I felt both seen and accepted, something unexpected happened. The shame I'd been carrying, it couldn't survive that kind of real connection. That's when it clicked for me. Courage, compassion, and genuine connection aren't just nice ideas. They're the foundation of living wholeheartedly. And the crazy part, the more we lean into our imperfections, the stronger those bonds become. Now for the plot twist. A week after my parenting talk at the school, I discovered I'd been unknowingly cast as the villain in a parent-teacher drama. Turns out, the principal and TOE president had secretly recruited me as their anti-helicopter parent enforcer, hoping I'd lecture the over-involved moms and dads. Joke's on them. I never even brought it up. So much for my mercenary parenting career. But here's what sticks with me. Courage isn't about grand gestures or flawless speeches. It's the quiet, everyday bravery of showing up as you are, heart out, armor off. The Latin root of courage, core heart, and that's no coincidence, because real courage starts there, in the messy, imperfect, beautifully human center of who we are. The meaning of courage has shifted dramatically over time. Originally, it wasn't about grand acts of heroism. It meant speaking your truth, laying bare your thoughts and emotions, no matter how raw or uncomfortable. Today, we tend to equate courage with epic bravery, like firefighters rushing into burning buildings. And while that kind of heroism matters, we've forgotten the quiet power of everyday courage, the kind that shows up when someone admits, "I'm struggling," or asks for help when they need it. Take my classroom, for example. There's nothing braver than a student raising their hand and saying, "I don't get this at all." The silence that follows is usually proof they're not alone, just the only one bold enough to admit it. Or my daughter Ellen, who once called me late at night from a sleepover, her voice shaky. "Mom, can you come get me?" When I arrived, she climbed into the car, embarrassed, whispering, "I wasn't brave enough. I got homesick." I didn't scold her. Instead, I told her the truth, that asking for what you need takes more guts than pretending you're fine. The next morning, over pancakes, she surprised me. "Can I ask for one more thing?" she said. "Next weekend sleepover, can you pick me up at bedtime? I'm just not ready yet." That's real courage, knowing your limits and owning them. I've had to learn this myself. For years, I downplayed my excitement about opportunities, a speaking gig, a promotion, like it was no big deal. We'll see," I'd say, even though inside I was desperate for it to happen. Turns out, pretending you don't care doesn't soften the blow if things fall through. Now, I'm trying to say, yes, this matters to me. Because that's the kind of courage that changes things, not the flashy, dramatic kind, but the honest, vulnerable kind. And honestly, we could all use a little more of that. Downplaying excitement might shield you from disappointment, but it also steals the joy when good things actually happen. Worse yet, it builds walls. When you act like something doesn't matter, friends won't think to check in when it falls through. These days, I push myself to be honest. I'm really hopeful about this, trying not to get ahead of myself, but I'd love for it to work out. And when it does, it's a relief to text a friend, that thing I was pumped about, dead in the water. A few weeks back, I saw raw, everyday bravery at my son Charlie's preschool holiday concert. Picture this. A swarm of overeager parents elbowing for the perfect phone footage while their kids mangled Jingle Bells. Amid the chaos, one little girl new to the class sobbed through the whole song because her mom wasn't there. Turns out she was stuck in traffic. By the time she rushed in, frazzled and scanning the room, I was crouched by the door saying bye to Charlie. Then it happened. Some mom breezed past, took one look at her, and I rolled like she just watched someone spill coffee on a designer handbag. My fingers twitched with the urge to trip her on her way out. But then two other moms stepped in. One touched her shoulder, Last year, I straight up forgot the concert existed, and the other laughed. My kid was the only one in jeans on pajama day. He's still salty. Just like that, the tension melted. By the time she reached her daughter, who launched herself like a tiny torpedo, she was laughing too. No grand gestures, just a couple of women saying, "Hey, we've messed up worse." That's courage, admitting your stumbles so someone else doesn't feel alone in theirs. Not alone. Those simple words carried weight because they weren't obligated to stop. They could have kept walking past her struggle like so many others do. That's the thing about bravery. It spreads. Each act of courage sends waves through the people around us, making the world slightly less afraid and a little more human. And let's be honest, our world desperately needs more of both. While researching for my book on shame, I dove deep into compassion studies, stumbling upon the profound teachings of Pema Chodron, an American Buddhist nun. In the places that scare you, she doesn't sugarcoat it. Practicing compassion is gutsy. It means leaning into discomfort instead of running from it, learning to soften rather than armor up. What struck me most was her raw take on how messy compassion really is. It's not some saintly reflex, but a choice that often scares us first. Digging into the roots of the word compassion, from the Latin pati and cum, meaning to suffer with, it's clear why our instinct isn't to embrace pain, our own or others. Our default, self-preservation. We deflect with blame, judgment, or frantic problem-solving like emotional handymen. Chodron calls this out, urging honesty about when we shut down. True compassion, she argues, isn't a hero-victim dynamic. It's two equals standing in each other's darkness, no saviors needed. Take Ashley, who didn't try to fix me during my lowest moments. She just showed up, no agenda, her presence saying, "I'm here in the mud with you." That's the real deal. Here's the kicker, though. Compassion isn't just softness, it demands boundaries. For years, I mistook being nice, while secretly stewing in resentment, for kindness. Now, I'm less sweet but far more compassionate because I've learned that accountability isn't the enemy of empathy. It's what keeps it real. The shift hasn't made me warmer on the outside, but inside. It's like trading a flickering candle for a steady flame. New detail. I once watched a barista pause mid-rush to kneel beside a crying stranger. No words, just handing her a napkin. No grand gesture, just humanity in action. Tone shift. And let's be real. If compassion were easy, we'd all be Zen masters sipping herbal tea while chaos unfolded. Instead, it's more like learning to dance in a minefield, where every step toward someone else's pain risks tripping over your own. Before diving into this study, I was familiar with the individual ideas of compassion and boundaries, but I never grasped how they interconnected. The real eye-opener came during my interviews. I was shocked to discover that the most genuinely compassionate individuals were also the ones who set the firmest boundaries. Who would have thought? Turns out, true compassion isn't about endless tolerance. It's rooted in acceptance. The more we embrace ourselves and others, flaws and all, the deeper our compassion grows. But let's be real. Acceptance gets tricky when someone's steamrolling over you. What this research hammered home is that real compassion starts with drawing lines and holding people responsible for their actions. We're drowning in a culture obsessed with blame, always hunting for someone to pin the problem on. Whether it's politics, work, or family drama, we're quick to shout and point fingers but slow to enforce actual consequences. Why? Because screaming ourselves hoarse leaves us too drained to do anything meaningful. From Capitol Hill to suburban living rooms, this cycle of outrage, blame, and exhaustion leaves little room for kindness. Imagine flipping the script. Less fury, more accountability. What if we swapped finger-pointing for clear boundaries and mutual respect? Take this corporate leader I recently advised. His team was struggling through a messy restructuring. He admitted to publicly shaming employees when they ignored his instructions. Frustrated, he'd corner them in meetings, berating their work in front of peers. "They just won't listen," he vented. But when I asked how he held them accountable, he blinked. Accountable, he echoed. No clear consequences, just simmering resentment. So I posed the question. If they understand the expectations but choose to ignore them, what's the next step? Silence. Here's the kicker: compassion isn't weakness. It's having the guts to say, I care about you, but this behavior isn't okay. And then actually meaning it. Imagine saying to someone, next time you break the rules, there will be an official write-up. Keep it up and you're out of a job. The manager hesitated, rubbing his temples. That's a whole ordeal. HR paperwork, meetings, the whole 9 yards. Way too much red tape. Here's the thing: setting clear expectations and enforcing consequences takes effort, way more than just venting frustration. But here's what doesn't work: public humiliation and empty threats. When you choose someone out in front of their coworkers, suddenly you're the problem, not their mistake. And if there's no real follow-through, people stop taking you seriously. Think about it: if your kid leaves dirty laundry everywhere and the only punishment is a 5-minute lecture, why would they believe it matters? Accountability doesn't have to be cruel. You can call out bad behavior and still respect the person. Fire someone, ground your teenager, fail a student without tearing them down. The trick: focus on the action, not the person. More on that later. But let's be real: holding the line and staying kind, that's uncomfortable. It's tempting to convince yourself they deserve this to make accountability feel justified. But that's a slippery slope. Resentment poisons compassion. If you're stewing in anger, you can't genuinely connect. And connection, that's the magic: when people feel seen, not just scolded. Like that moment after a tough conversation when both of you finally breathe. Ashley and I had that. No blame, just understanding. That's the balance: boundaries with humanity, consequences without cruelty. Because without both, you're either a pushover or a tyrant, and neither builds trust. New detail: picture this: a coworker who always misses deadlines. Instead of ranting, you pull them aside. Hey, when projects are late, it bottlenecks the team. What's getting in your way? Suddenly, it's not an attack, it's a solution. Tone shift: wait, did we just make accountability respectful? Wild concept, right? But it works. Bottom line: ditch the shame, keep the standards. And remember, you can be firm without being harsh. Your relationships and your sanity will thank you. Reaching out for help was terrifying, but the moment I did, something incredible happened. Ashley and I both felt stronger, more alive. A few weeks later, she admitted, that call changed everything. Knowing I wasn't alone in my struggles made me feel less broken, and realizing I could actually help you, that meant the world. Turns out, connection isn't just some warm, fuzzy concept, it's science. Literally built for it. From our first breath, our brains crave bonds that fuel every part of us. 10 years ago, calling humans social creatures might have earned you an eye roll, but now, neuroscience backs it up. In Social Intelligence, Daniel Goleman dives into how our relationships rewire our brains, proving even casual interactions shape our emotions. The stronger the bond, the deeper the impact, like emotional gravity pulling us closer. But here's the kicker: we've started faking it. Swiping through Instagram DMs or binge texting fools us into thinking we're connected, when really we're just busy. Ever seen a family at dinner, everyone glued to separate screens? Congrats, you've witnessed the illusion of connection. We've traded eye contact for emojis, convinced that being online means being understood. Spoiler: it doesn't. The real hurdle: our obsession with doing it all alone. Society treats needing help like a weakness, as if independence is the ultimate trophy. Newsflash: no one wins that way. We're all givers and takers. Pretending otherwise just leaves us stranded. So next time you're drowning, yell for a lifeline. The water's colder when you try to swim solo. Living wholeheartedly has taught me invaluable lessons about generosity, both giving and receiving. But one truth stands out above the rest: true generosity flows both ways. If we can't accept help without hesitation or shame, we're not truly giving freely either. For years, I wore my role as the family helper like a badge of honor. the one who swooped in with advice, money, or crisis management, but asking for help. That felt like admitting defeat. I'd never dream of calling my siblings during my own struggles, especially when shame had me in its grip. Back then, I'd have sworn my giving came without strings, but now I see the truth. My self-worth was tangled up in being the unshakable one, the one who never faltered. Then came the moment I had no choice. I needed my family. Desperately, and you know what? Letting my younger brother and sister step up didn't just save me, it rewired our entire relationship. Suddenly, they weren't just my siblings, they were my lifelines. I learned to be vulnerable, and in return, they shared their strength and wisdom. Connection isn't a one-way street. It's an electric current that only works when both sides are plugged in. Living wholeheartedly isn't the easy path, it's the brave one. It means showing up fully, even when the world tells us to armor up. It's choosing courage over comfort, staying open in a culture that rewards detachment. Half measures don't cut it. You have to look life in the eye and say, I'm all in. And love. Love is the heartbeat of it all, the force we'd move mountains for, yet we stumble over the words to describe it. Through my research, I found one glaring difference between those who felt truly loved and those who chased it: belief in their own worthiness. It's that simple and that hard. To belong, we must first believe we deserve to belong. No conditions, no fine print. We exhaust ourselves trying to outrun the messy parts of our stories, polishing our personas instead of embracing our real, imperfect selves. But here's the secret. Worthiness isn't waiting for you at some finish line. It's right here in this messy, unedited moment. You don't have to earn it, you just have to claim it. Funny how the things we resist most, like asking for help, often become the very things that set us free. And a final thought, courtesy of Diane Ackerman. Love is the force we'd fight for, die for, yet we barely have the language to speak its name. Without the words, how can we even begin to understand it? But here's what I know: love and belonging aren't luxuries. They're oxygen. And the only thing standing between us and them is the courage to believe we're worthy of both. Right now. As we all carry around these invisible checklists. Sometimes we write them ourselves, sometimes they're handed to us, and other times we just absorb them without realizing it. I'll be enough when I drop those last 20 pounds. I'll be enough if I finally get that promotion. I'll be enough when my partner stops nagging me. I'll be enough once my social media following hits 10K. Sound familiar? But here's the radical truth at the core of living wholeheartedly. You're already worthy. Not if, not when, right now, exactly as you are. But owning that truth isn't just about ditching the conditions we attach to our worth. It's also about understanding what love and belonging really mean. And let's be honest, we crave both, yet we rarely stop to define them. Love, belonging. We toss those words around like confetti, but when was the last time you sat down and really dissected what they mean? For years, I dodged using the word love in my research because, frankly, it felt too slippery. I couldn't just shrug and say, you know, love, like some rom-com montage. And while song lyrics and poetry might hit us in the feels, they don't exactly pass the academic sniff test. It's wild, we spend our lives chasing love, yet we barely talk about what it actually is. In a way, love is like shame's weird twin. We avoid shame at all costs, refusing to name it, yet the only way to break its grip is to drag it into the light. Maybe we're scared of both because they force us to be vulnerable, no armor, no filters. Then there's belonging. Most of us confuse it with fitting in, and let's be real, we're all experts at that. We know the script: dress right, laugh at the right jokes, nod along even when we're screaming inside. But here's the kicker: fitting in is the opposite of belonging. Fitting in means contorting yourself to match the room. Belonging, that's showing up as you and still being welcomed. Before we dig deeper, here's the hard truth. Love and belonging will always be messy. No matter how much we crave certainty, connection doesn't come with a measuring tape. And that's okay. Because the real magic happens when we stop performing and start being. Human connections can't be neatly boxed into multiple choice answers. The magic of relationships exists in that mysterious space between us, a place we'll never fully map or explain. We're all just stumbling through attempts to define love and belonging, grasping at something inherently undefinable. And let's be honest, even researchers like me are just throwing our best guesses into the void. Here's what shocked me after years of interviews. Love and belonging are inseparable dance partners. Every time people described one, the other came twirling right behind. Same goes for joy and gratitude, but we'll save that juicy pairing for another day. When emotions are this tightly braided in people's stories, it's not some random tangle. It's a deliberate, unbreakable knot. After analyzing thousands of voices, here's my rock-solid conclusion. We're hardwired for love and belonging like plants are wired for sunlight. Strip those away and watch what happens. Souls crumble, bodies revolt, hearts turn hollow. People numb the pain, lash out, or collapse inward. Sure, other things can make us sick, but a life without love, that's a guaranteed ticket to suffering. 3 years of chiseling through a decade's worth of interviews gave me these definitions. Brace yourself, they might sting a little. Love isn't some transaction where you hand over affection like spare change. It's what happens when two people stand bare before each other, flaws glowing, and choose to water that connection with trust, kindness, and relentless honesty. Here's the kicker. You can't pour love into others if your own cup is empty. Shame and betrayal, those are weed killer for love's roots. Belonging is that primal hunger to be part of something bigger. But here's where we screw up. We chase it by morphing into what others want, not realizing that fitting in is just a cheap knockoff. True belonging demands your messy, unfiltered self. And guess what? You'll only ever belong as deeply as you accept yourself. Some days, I hated these findings. Studying bird poop on geraniums would have been easier. But no, I got stuck wrestling with truths that made me sob over spreadsheets. Because when the data stares back at you, whispering painful realities about human hearts, sometimes all you can do is let the tears fall. I never wanted my struggles with self-acceptance to hold me back from loving my family fully. Funny how it's simpler to embrace their flaws than to show myself the same compassion. Real self-love isn't just warm fuzzies. It's about trusting yourself, showing up with respect, and cutting yourself some slack. Yet here we are, whispering brutal things to ourselves we'd never dare say to someone else. I'm such a mess, or why can't I get anything right? Sound familiar? If we wouldn't trash talk our loved ones, why do it to ourselves? Belonging isn't some trendy concept, it's coded into us, as essential as breathing. Our brains are wired to crave connection, thanks to ancient survival instincts. But here's the irony. In a world obsessed with filters and highlight reels, authenticity gets buried under performative perfection. We morph into chameleons, trading our real selves for scraps of approval. Sure, I'll laugh at that toxic joke if it means fitting in. I'll pretend to love kale smoothies if it makes me seem put together. But fake belonging leaves us emptier than ever. True connection, that only happens when we show up, flaws, quirks, and all, and find people who celebrate the unedited version of us. Love isn't a Hallmark card, it's a daily choice. I learned this the hard way during a sleepless night with my toddler when I snapped at my husband Steve over a misplaced sippy cup. In that moment, practicing love meant swallowing my frustration instead of unloading it. Because let's be real, screaming, "I love you," means nothing if your actions scream, "You're an inconvenience." A radio host once asked me if love and betrayal can coexist. I paused. Can you adore someone while stabbing them in the back? Technically, maybe. But love isn't a static emotion, it's a verb. Betrayal isn't a stumble, it's a full-stop contradiction. Every eye roll, broken promise, or cruel dig chips away at it. So no, you can't practice love while leaving wreckage in your wake. The math just doesn't add up. New detail. Last week my daughter drew me a lopsided heart and said, "Mama, this is you perfect cause it's your heart." Kids get it. Why don't we? Tone shift, serious right arrow rye. Sure, we could keep treating self-love like a spa day we'll eventually schedule. Or we could admit that hating ourselves is exhausting, like wearing shoes 2 sizes too small while pretending they're definitely fine. Newsflash, they're not. And neither is sacrificing your worth for cheap belonging. Time to kick them off and walk barefoot into the messy, magnificent truth of who you are for me. Love isn't just about words, it's about actions. I need someone who shows up for me, not just someone who claims to care. These realizations didn't just reshape how I saw relationships. They made me face the truth. Self-love isn't some optional side project. You can't just squeeze it in between errands or Netflix binges. It's non-negotiable. But here's the kicker. Can we really love others more than we love ourselves? Back in 2009, I threw that question to my readers, and let's just say the comment section exploded. Some people fought hard against the idea that self-love is the foundation for loving others. Others believed pouring love into someone else could teach you how to love yourself. And then there were the ones who just groaned, "Great, now I have to rethink my whole life, thanks for that." Two responses cut through the noise. Justin Valentin, a therapist and writer, put it bluntly. Being a parent forced him to love in ways he never thought possible. Seeing his daughter, who looked just like him as a kid, made him realize he needed to show that same kindness to the little girl still inside him. But here's the twist. Loving his kids came way easier than loving himself. Then he dropped the real talk. He'd worked with mothers battling addiction, women who swore they'd die for their kids but treated themselves like garbage. Sure, they loved their children more, but was that love healthy? If you're drowning in self-hatred, what spills onto the people you love? It's like secondhand smoke. You think you're only hurting yourself, but the damage spreads. New detail. One reader, a recovering addict, later messaged me privately, saying this analogy hit hard. She'd never realized how her own lack of self-worth had seeped into her parenting until she got sober. The debate didn't end there, but one thing was clear. Love isn't a competition. If you're running on empty, you can't fuel anyone else. And yeah, that's uncomfortable. But maybe that's the point. Renee Cobb juggled 2 lives. By day, she worked toward becoming a therapist, and by night, she secretly poured her thoughts onto the page as a writer and blogger. She once reflected, "The people we love push us toward incredible acts of kindness and devotion, but to truly reach those heights, we have to dig deep, confronting both the light and darkness within ourselves. It's not about choosing between loving others or ourselves. It's about doing both. That fierce love we feel for someone else, it should drive us inward, forcing us to face our own flaws and fears so we can learn to treat ourselves with the same compassion we so freely give away." I couldn't agree more with Renee and Justin. In a world that constantly tells us to put everyone else first, choosing to love and accept ourselves is nothing short of rebellion. To join that revolution, we have to dissect what love and belonging really mean, why we sometimes chase validation instead of owning our worth, and what stands in our way. Every meaningful journey has its roadblocks, and the path to living wholeheartedly is no exception. Now, let's talk about one of my biggest wake-up calls. Back in 2008, I got an invite to speak at the Up Experience, a high-profile event. The hosts were fantastic people, so I immediately said yes without overthinking it. Ever notice how things seem way more glamorous when they're just an idea? Fast forward to 2009, when the speaker lineup dropped online, and let's just say my name looked hilariously out of place. The event promised 16 of the world's most brilliant minds, and there I was, sandwiched between Robert Ballard, the guy who found the Titanic, Neil deGrasse Tyson, yes, that Neil deGrasse Tyson, and political mastermind David Plouffe. Panic set in. Not only was I convinced I'd accidentally hacked their guest list, but the format was terrifying. A tight 20-minute TED-style talk for a room full of Fortune 500 executives who'd paid $1,000 each to be there. My first move. Calling my friend Jen and reading her the speaker list in the tone of someone who just realized they'd signed up to skydive without a parachute. I exhaled slowly after reading the last name on the list, gripping my phone tighter. Honestly, I'm having serious doubts about this whole thing. Even through the static of the long-distance call, I could practically feel Jen rolling her eyes. Stop overanalyzing, Brené. Put away the academic ruler for once. What's that supposed to mean? I snapped, defensive. She laughed. Come on, I know you. You're already stressing about how to cram 20 minutes with data and footnotes like it's a dissertation defense. Well, yeah, I shot back. Have you seen this lineup? These aren't just any people, they're actual adults. Jen snorted. Should I card them for you? Silence, she sighed. Listen, your research is solid, but your best work, it's not the stats, it's the stories. Just be you, keep it raw, keep it honest. I hung up, muttering under my breath. Stories? Seriously. Might as well break out the sock puppets while I'm at it. Normally, prepping a talk took me a day, maybe two. No notes, just a loose outline and slides, but this time, a puppet show would have been less painful. For weeks, I was stuck in a fog of panic, my brain refusing to cooperate. Then 2 weeks before the event, Steve caught me staring blankly at my laptop. How's the talk shaping up? Cue the waterworks. It's not, I choked out. I've got nothing, absolutely nothing. At this point, faking my own death might be easier. Steve sat beside me, his grip firm on my hand. Whoa, this isn't you. You've done 100 of these. What's really going on? I slumped forward, my voice muffled. I'm stuck. This thing from years ago I can't shake. Thing, he frowned. What thing? I never told you, I admitted. He leaned in, eyebrows raised. 5 years back, I completely face-planted during a talk. Worst moment of my career, and now, I'm terrified it'll happen again. Steve looked stunned. Why am I just hearing about this now? What even happened? I tried to bolt, but he tugged me back, giving me that "oh no you don't" look. Aren't you the one who says we should talk through the tough stuff? That it helps? Exhausted, I caved. 5 years ago, fresh off my first book release, I'd been invited to speak at a high-profile women's networking event. My first real-world audience, no therapists or academics in sight. I showed up early at the fancy country club venue, nerves buzzing, and introduced myself to the organizer, all polished smiles. Little did I know, disaster was lurking just around the corner. New detail. As I recounted the story, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Something Steve noticed immediately, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. Voice twist, from sarcastic frustration to raw vulnerability. No puppet jokes now, just the crushing weight of a fear I'd buried for years. She studied me with the intensity of a detective sizing up a suspect before finally delivering a rapid-fire greeting. Hi, you don't fit the researcher mold. I'll introduce you. Hand me your bio. Not exactly the warm welcome I'd hoped for, but fine. I passed her my bio, and within seconds her expression shifted from skeptical to horrified. Peering over her glasses like a disappointed schoolteacher, she blurted, "This says you research shame. Seriously." Suddenly, I was a kid caught cheating on a test. My shoulders slumped. "Yes," I mumbled. "I study shame." Her lips tightened. "Do you research anything else?" The interrogation continued. "Well," she pressed. "Fear and vulnerability," I admitted. Her reaction was a mix of a gasp and a shriek, like she'd just stepped on a Lego. "I was told you studied happiness. How to find joy, connection, all that feel-good stuff." Ah, mystery solved. Someone had oversold me. I tried to clarify, "I don't study how to be happy, I study what blocks happiness, the obstacles to joy and meaning." No response, just a dramatic exit, leaving me stranded in my own ironic puddle of inadequacy. She returned moments later, eyes fixed somewhere above my head, and laid down the law. Rule 1, no talk of obstacles, only how to. That's what sells. Rule 2, don't say shame. People are eating. Rule 3, keep it upbeat, comfortable, joyful. I stood there, stunned. Before I could protest, she chirped, "Great," and turned to leave, then spun back for a final note. "Oh, and keep it light." To emphasize, she flung her arms wide like she was directing a Broadway musical about sunshine. For the next 40 minutes, I robotically recited variations of "Joy is amazing, happiness is the best, let's all be joyful forever." The audience smiled, nodded, and chewed their chicken salad. Total disaster. When I finished recounting the ordeal to Steve, his face was twisted in second-hand embarrassment. Public speaking isn't his thing, so I suspect he was fighting his own nerves just listening. But oddly, reliving the humiliation made me feel lighter, like laughing at a bad date. Sometimes the worst moments make the best stories. The moment I finished sharing my story with Steve, something inside me shifted. It clicked: my entire career, my decade of research, it all revolves around the obstacles we face, not some quick fix guide. I've never seen a how-to actually work without addressing the messy, uncomfortable barriers first. Owning that truth gave me clarity. I'm not here to hand out easy answers. I met Steve's eyes with a grin. How-to just isn't my thing. Then it hit me. That woman from the country club wasn't some villain out to ruin my talk. If she were, her absurd demands wouldn't have cut so deep. Her checklist was a symptom of something bigger, our collective fear of discomfort. We crave tidy, bullet-pointed happiness, but life doesn't work that way. Let's be real. Who wouldn't love to skip the hard parts? But growth doesn't happen without wrestling with the tough stuff. Joy, connection, meaning. They're on the other side of the swamp, not some glossy brochure. Funny enough, I ended up telling that light and breezy story at the UP experience anyway. Risky, sure, but even executives struggle with self-doubt. And guess what? The feedback blew me away. Top 2 talks of the day. The organizer even called me the dark horse. Here's the truth. If we want to live wholeheartedly, we've got to wade into the uncomfortable stuff: shame, fear, vulnerability. Think of shame like a swamp. You don't want to live there, trust me, I've tried, but you can't just stare at it from the shore either. The real work, grabbing a friend's hand and crossing it. Because standing there paralyzed by what-ifs hurts worse than the mud ever could. Yeah, how-to lists are tempting. Who wouldn't take a shortcut? But the swamp is where the magic happens. And on the other side, that's where your worthiness is waiting. Here's the paradox. Why do we keep searching for how-to guides when deep down we already know what to do, yet we're still stuck, craving more happiness, deeper connections, and real purpose? Let's be honest, most of us could write a book on healthy eating. I could rattle off calorie counts like the alphabet or debate keto versus paleo in my sleep. We've memorized budgeting tips, self-care routines, and productivity hacks. But here's the kicker. Despite all that knowledge, we're drowning in debt, glued to our phones, and stress-eating our way through another Netflix binge. So what's the disconnect? We've got more data at our fingertips than any generation before us. So why are we more overwhelmed than ever? Simple. We ignore the real roadblocks. Sure, I can meal prep like a pro, until my kid's science fair project implodes, the Wi-Fi crashes during my Zoom meeting, and the dog drags mud across the couch. Suddenly, kale feels like a cruel joke. We don't admit how often we use food, busyness, or mindless scrolling to quiet the chaos, or how the pressure to have it all turns us into our own worst critics. Take yesterday. I wanted Charlie's chicken soup to be Instagram worthy, Ellen's diorama to look like a Pinterest fail didn't happen, and my inbox to scream, "I've got my life together." Meanwhile, my inner soundtrack was less Eye of the Tiger and more a broken record of "Why can't you keep up?" That hustle for approval, it's exhausting. And let's be real, no one's handing out trophies for remembering the compostable poop bags. Here's the truth they don't put in self-help books. Knowing isn't the hard part. It's silencing the gremlins whispering you're failing when life gets messy. That's the real work, and it's way messier than any diet plan. That nagging voice whispers, "You'll never be enough." Fill in the blank with whatever insecurity hits hardest: pretty, successful, wealthy, smart, or even just happy. Then come the other toxic thoughts. Hide your truth or they'll judge you. Fake it till you make it, or the worst one. Who do you think you are to share your voice with the world? Shame hits like a wave of heat, shrinking us down, making us believe we're broken beyond repair. But here's the truth. Shame thrives in silence. The moment we start talking about it, we take back our power. After writing "I Thought It Was Just Me," I got flooded with messages from people saying the same thing. Just naming shame out loud changed everything. And yes, you can absolutely eat pizza while having this conversation. Shame doesn't get to ruin snacks, too. Shame Resilience Crash Course: 3 Hard Truths You Need to Hear. 1. Everyone feels shame. It's baked into being human, only those who can't connect with others escape it. 2. The more we avoid talking about it, the tighter its grip gets. Shame isn't just about hiding failures. It's also about downplaying our strengths because we're terrified of standing out. 3. Shame isn't reserved for big tragedies. It lurks in everyday places. How you look in jeans, that fight with your kid, the unpaid bills, even the pride you're scared to admit when you nail something. Here's the definition I landed on after years of research. Shame is that soul-crushing belief that we're too flawed to be loved. It tricks us into thinking our truth will make people walk away, when really that's where connection begins. Perfectionists, shame's favorite targets, because if you're busy keeping up appearances, you're too exhausted to speak up. New detail. One reader told me shame hit hardest at her daughter's soccer game. Other moms were raving about homemade organic snacks while she pulled out a bag of store-bought cookies. The kicker: her kid didn't care. The shame was all in her head. Voice shift. Let's get blunt. Shame is a liar. It hisses that you're the only one struggling, but look around. That coworker who seems flawless, probably stressing over something just as random. The influencer with the perfect life. Filters and selective posting. We're all a mess in different fonts. Opening up about our struggles isn't just about facing judgment. It's the terrifying possibility that one moment could overshadow everything else about us. We worry that a single chapter of our lives might become the whole book, even when it's just a page. In "I Thought It Was Just Me," I share stories like one woman's heartbreaking moment after confiding in her neighbor about her sobriety. The neighbor's response: "I don't know if I want my kids around you anymore." But here's the kicker: she didn't back down. "I've been sober longer than your kids have been alive," she fired back. "Nothing's changed except what you now know. So why are you acting different?" Shame isn't just an emotion. It's the fear that we're unlovable, that we don't belong. And since connection is as essential as oxygen, it's no wonder shame hijacks our lives. The irony: we don't even need to feel shame to be crushed by it. Just the fear of being seen as unworthy can muzzle us. But here's the twist. Shame resilience isn't some rare superpower. It's a skill we can all build. It starts with spotting shame before it spirals, calling out its lies, and refusing to let it rewrite our worth. The secret: shame thrives in silence. It feeds on secrecy and judgment, ballooning until it eclipses everything else. But when we drag it into the light, when we hand our story to someone who's earned the right to hear it, shame shrinks. It loses its grip. Healing happens in the telling. After years of research, I found that people who conquer shame share 4 habits. 1. They name shame when it shows up, recognizing the triggers that make them feel not enough. 2. They fact-check shame's toxic script, because imperfection doesn't equal failure. 3. They reach out, sharing their truth with people who have proven they're safe. 4. They say the word shame out loud, refusing to let it fester in the dark. The most resilient people I've met, they don't just survive their stories, they own them. And in doing so, they rewrite shame's ending. Understanding our worthiness and building resilience against shame starts with embracing our own stories. Before diving into one of my personal experiences with shame resilience, let's tackle 2 big questions people often have about shame. Because honestly, this stuff can be tricky to unpack. First up, What's the real difference between shame and guilt? Experts agree it boils down to identity versus action. Guilt whispers, I messed up, while shame hisses, I am the mess. Guilt focuses on behavior, like when you regret snapping at a friend or skipping the gym, and it can actually be useful. It nudges us to apologize, fix mistakes, or adjust our actions. Shame, on the other hand, claws at our sense of self. It doesn't just say you did wrong, it says you are wrong. And that's where things get toxic. Research shows shame eats away at the belief that we can grow, while guilt often fuels positive change. Now the second question, doesn't shame keep people in check? Nope. If anything, it backfires spectacularly. Think about it, when you're drowning in shame, do you feel motivated or just broken? Shame isolates us, making us more likely to lash out, numb the pain, or spiral into self-destruction. Studies link it to everything from addiction to bullying. Kids who internalize I'm bad instead of I made a mistake grow up wrestling with self-doubt. Using shame as a parenting tool, that just teaches kids they have to earn love, not that they're worthy of it inherently. Here's the kicker, though. Even when you're knee-deep in shame research, shame can still blindside you. Trust me, I've been there. One minute you're fine, the next you're spiraling without knowing why. But here's the hopeful twist: practice enough resilience, and one day that sneaks up on you too. Take this story. Back in 2009, my blog got featured on my hosting site's homepage, bringing in readers who'd never go looking for topics like courage or authenticity. One day an email popped up from a woman complimenting my blog's design. Flattering, right? Then I kept reading. I really like your blog. Cue the record scratch. Her tone shifted, and suddenly I wasn't feeling proud. I was bracing for impact. Shame has a way of turning even praise into a trapdoor. But that's the thing about sharing these stories. It pulls shame into the light where it loses its power. The comment caught me completely off guard. It was so creative yet oddly critical. The only photo she had an issue with: a silly snapshot of me and my best friend Laura in a dimly lit movie theater, waiting for sex and the city to start. It was opening night and we were giddy, so I snapped a quick selfie. But this stranger's email tore into it like it was some kind of crime. At first, I was fuming. I stormed around my kitchen, fingers flying over my keyboard as I drafted not one, not two, but three scathing replies. The first was dripping with sarcasm. Wow, thanks for the photography critique. Good thing I'm the shame expert here, not you. The second, a petty jab at her own online portfolio. And the third, a grammar lesson wrapped in pure venom. But then I paused. My fingers hovered over the send button, my chest tight. Instead, I grabbed my sneakers, shoved on a baseball cap, and bolted outside. The pavement pounded under my feet as I dialed Laura. You won't believe this, I huffed, recounting the email. She gasped. Seriously, what are you gonna say back? I read her my ruthless drafts and she went silent. Brené, she finally said, that's intense. I'd just cry if someone sent me that. That stopped me mid-stride. Sweat trickled down my temple as I processed her words. Wait, you'd cry? Yeah, she admitted. Why? A realization hit me like a punch. Because for me, being mean is easy. It's my automatic defense, but actually letting myself feel hurt, that's the scary part. Laura stayed quiet, letting it sink in. The truth was, my sharp tongue was just armor. The real courage, vulnerability, letting criticism sting instead of striking back. And in that moment, panting on the sidewalk, I knew I wasn't sending any of those emails, allowing myself to truly feel the sting of hurt. That's where things get real. Laura and I walked through it, unpacking how courage looks different for each of us. For her, it's about facing pain head-on instead of dodging it. For me, it's sitting with that ache and resisting the urge to lash out. We both knew cruelty isn't bravery, it's just lazy, especially in a world that often rewards quick, cutting comebacks. After another half-mile of conversation, Laura nudged me. All right, so if acknowledging the hurt is step one, what's the bold move here with this email? I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Feel it, let the tears come, talk to you, then trash it without firing back. Laura's eyes lit up. Wait, that's shame resilience in action. You're doing it. I blinked. Doing what? She grinned. Your own research, the 4 steps, naming shame, owning it, sharing it. Sound familiar? Your book. We burst out laughing and it hit me. Damn, this stuff actually works. A week later, I stood in front of 70 grad students in my shame and empathy seminar. When someone asked for a real-life example, I shared the email story, how a snarky comment about my amateur photography had sent me spiraling. I confessed my knee-jerk craving to retaliate and the room tensed. Some students winced, others avoided eye contact. Then one guy raised his hand. Can I dig deeper? I nodded, bracing myself. You said the shame was about the photo critique, he ventured, but was it really? Or was it because you'd let your guard down and someone took a swing at you when you were open? The room went still. My palms dampened. Holy crap, I whispered. You're right. The picture was just a silly theater selfie, something I'd never usually post. But I was with my best friend, laughing like kids. The shame wasn't about the photo. It was about getting burned for being seen. The students exhaled. A few nodded slowly as if they just cracked a code. And in that moment I realized courage isn't armor. It's showing up unguarded even when you know it might hurt. I shared my work online, buzzing with excitement. It was playful, imperfect, and totally me. Then came the criticism. A few classmates shot daggers at the critic like, nice job, you wrecked her confidence. But here's the twist. I didn't feel shattered. Not even a little. Instead, it was freeing. The real story wasn't about some newbie photographer getting roasted over a photo. It was about a usually serious person letting loose, being silly, spontaneous, unpolished, and someone poking at that rawness. Resilience isn't a light switch. It's a slow unraveling. What was that moment trying to teach me? What were those nagging insecurities whispering? Owning your story isn't just about embracing it. It's about digging past the surface to find the real narrative. And if we want to build true self-worth, we've got to learn how to armor up against shame. So, what does shame look like? To crack that code, I lean on the brilliant work from Wellesley Stone Center. Dr. Linda Hartling, formerly a relational cultural theorist there, now leading human dignity and humiliation studies, breaks down our shame defenses using Karen Horney's framework: moving toward, moving against, or moving away. Some of us move away, retreating, clamming up, burying the messy parts. Others move toward, people-pleasing, smoothing things over. And then there's moving against, lashing out, weaponizing shame right back. Ever sent a rage email? Yeah, that. We all cycle through these depending on the situation. But here's the catch. Every single one pulls us further from our truth. Shame thrives on fear, blame, and isolation. Story. That's where worthiness lives, flaws and all, serving up courage, compassion, and real connection. To live fully without that knowing not enough soundtrack, we've got to claim our narrative and learn to shut shame down without pouring gasoline on it. First step, spotting shame when it hits. It's a full-body experience. People with solid shame resilience recognize the signs. For me, it's a wave of heat, a racing heart, sudden cottonmouth, even this weird armpit prickling. Know your tells. That way you can pause before firing off that text, email, or comeback you'll cringe at later. Pro tip: when shame's got you in a chokehold, you're not fit for human interaction. Reboot first. New detail: ever notice how time warps when shame kicks in? 1 second you're fine, the next you're stuck in slow-mo panic. That's your cue to breathe, not react. Shame's a liar. Your story. That's your superpower. It usually takes me about 10 to 15 minutes to collect myself, and yeah, I'll probably shed a few tears before I'm back on my feet. Prayer helps too. Recognizing this about myself is a blessing. If you're looking to build shame resilience and own your story, start by asking yourself these game-changing questions. Who do you turn into when shame corners you? What armor do you throw on to protect yourself? Who's your go-to person when the self-doubt creeps in or you're stuck in people-pleasing mode? And what's the bravest move you could make when you feel tiny and bruised? Not everyone deserves to hear your story. It's a gift, not an obligation. Before opening up, ask, has this person earned the right? If you've got even one person who can sit with you in your mess, love you through your flaws, and celebrate your strength, you're luckier than you realize. A tight circle of friends or family who sees your cracks and still calls you whole, that's rare magic. Here's the truth. You don't need universal approval. Just one person who makes you feel like you belong. And if you've got that, the best way to honor it is to believe you're worthy of it. Real connections start with you saying, I am enough. Too many people chase happiness backward, thinking money or success will finally let them be themselves. But life doesn't work that way. First, you have to be who you are. Then do what matters. Only then can you have what you truly want. Before diving into this work, I used to see authenticity as a fixed trait. You either had it or you didn't. But the deeper I went, the clearer it became. Authenticity isn't a personality type. It's a daily decision. It's choosing honesty over comfort, showing up even when you'd rather hide. Some days I nail it. Other days, I morph into whatever the situation demands. And yeah, even with all I know, shame can still make me fake it. That's the exhausting, hopeful truth. Authenticity isn't a finish line. It's the path you choose, step by step. There's something undeniably powerful about embracing authenticity. It gives us hope. We admire people who are genuine, warm, and unapologetically themselves. And deep down, we want that same freedom. But let's be real. Living authentically in a world obsessed with perfection is exhausting. Society bombards us with impossible standards, from the ideal body type to the picture-perfect home, making it feel like an uphill battle just to stay true to ourselves. So, I dug into my research to break down what authenticity really means. What does it look like in everyday life? Here's what I landed on. Authenticity isn't a one-time decision, it's a daily choice. It's about ditching the script of who we think we should be and owning who we actually are. That means having the guts to be imperfect, to say no when needed, and to let ourselves be seen, flaws and all. Practicing kindness, not just toward others but toward ourselves, because we're all a mix of resilience and rough edges. Building real connections, the kind that only happen when we stop pretending and start believing we're worthy as we are. Living authentically isn't for the faint of heart. It means showing up fully, even when shame whispers that we're not enough, or when joy feels so big it's almost scary. But here's the magic. When we lean into authenticity, especially in our toughest moments, we make space for joy, gratitude, and even a little grace. You'll see these ideas pop up again and again, because authenticity isn't a solo act. It's tangled up with everything else we'll explore, from perfectionism to vulnerability. Each piece matters on its own, but together, that's where the real transformation happens. Let's be honest, choosing authenticity is a rebellion. As E. E. Cummings put it, staying true to yourself in a world that wants you to conform is the fight of a lifetime. And yeah, it'll ruffle some feathers. Loved ones might not get it at first. Some will cheer you on, while others might panic, wondering if your changes mean you're leaving them behind. But that discomfort, it's proof you're doing something right. Because the bravest thing you'll ever do is refuse to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations. True authenticity isn't just about being real. It's about having the guts to be real when the world expects you to stay small. We've all got those nagging fears in the back of our minds, whispering that we're too much or not enough. When I first started embracing my own worthiness, it felt like stepping into a battlefield where every insecurity had a megaphone. What if I believe in myself but nobody else does? What if I show the messy, unfiltered version of me and people walk away? What if they prefer the polished, people-pleasing version, the one who never says no? The moment you start living authentically, the pushback begins. It might be subtle, side glances, passive-aggressive comments, or outright harsh like rejection or public shaming. My research on shame and vulnerability revealed something brutal. Women often face backlash just for speaking their truth. The expectations are impossible. Be honest, but don't make anyone uncomfortable. Be strong, but don't seem aggressive. Stand out, but don't disrupt the status quo. And let's not forget the double standards. Society tells women to shrink, stay thin, sweet, and agreeable, while men get boxed into emotional detachment, career obsession, and dominance. Want to play it safe? For women, that means staying quiet and pretty. For men, it means shutting down feelings and chasing status. But here's the kicker. Authenticity isn't about playing it safe. It's about choosing truth over approval, even when it stings. Stepping into vulnerability means risking ridicule, especially in a world where keyboard warriors thrive on tearing others down. Hiding behind screens makes cruelty effortless. But let's be real, anonymous hate says more about the critic than the target. Yeah, putting yourself out there leaves bruises, but staying silent, that leaves scars. Putting yourself out there, your real self, your work, your truth, isn't easy. The moment you step into the spotlight, some people will take aim at what stings the most. How you look, whether you're worthy of love, even how you raise your kids. But here's the catch. If you shut out every opinion and armor up against criticism, you lose the ability to connect. True courage isn't about being bulletproof. It's about sharing your story even when your knees shake. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the price of admission for real relationships. Let's be honest. Choosing authenticity can feel like walking a tightrope without a net. There's fear in showing up as you are, but there's a heavier cost to staying hidden. Those thoughts you swallow, they don't vanish. They fester, gnawing at your sense of worth. We should come with a disclaimer like those on cigarette packs. Warning: abandoning your true self for approval may result in anxiety, loneliness, or a slow-burning resentment that ruins your favorite sweatpants. Trading authenticity for safety. Bad deal. Sure, your honesty might ruffle feathers at first, but living honestly is the greatest act of love for yourself and the people who matter. When I stopped twisting myself into a pretzel to please everyone, something wild happened. I had more energy, not just for my work, but for my husband Steve and our kids, Ellen and Charlie. Turns out pretending to be perfect is exhausting. They're on their own messy journeys toward authenticity too. We all are. So how do you stay grounded when vulnerability hits? Dig deep. Get deliberate. Before I walk into a tough conversation or a room full of side eyes, I whisper, don't shrink, don't puff up, hold your ground. There's power in standing firm, not folding to make others comfortable, not armoring up to fake confidence. Get inspired. My friend Catherine Center nailed it. Be brave with your life so others can be brave with theirs. Every time someone shares their art, their truth, or their weird hobby, looking at you, competitive axe throwers, it's permission for the rest of us to do the same. Get going, my rule. Aim for authenticity, not applause. If I show up real and someone doesn't like it, fine. But if I twist myself into a people-pleasing knot and still get rejected, that's when shame creeps in. So I start by asking, what's true for me? And go from there. How do you dig deep? One of the most rewarding parts of my job is hearing from readers who connect with my work. Back in 2009, after receiving my 1,000th email from someone who had read I Thought It Was Just Me, I decided to launch an 8-week online book club on my blog. I named it Shameless Joyful, a space where we could explore the book together, one chapter a week, with discussions, creative exercises, and even podcasts to deepen the experience. To this day, people still use it because tackling tough topics with others makes the journey far more meaningful. Right before we kicked off, I got an email that stuck with me. The reader wrote, "Love the read-along idea. I don't think shame is my issue, but if you ever do something on perfectionism, count me in." Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "Wait, shame and perfectionism aren't linked, are they?" I couldn't help but smile. I wrote back explaining that shame and perfectionism are practically best friends. Where one thrives, the other isn't far behind. In fact, perfectionism often grows from the soil of shame. Her reply was priceless. Okay, you might want to mention that before we dive in. My friends and I own our perfectionism, but shame, nah, that's not us. We don't claim shame. I've heard that line more times than I can count. And sure, shame is a heavy word. It's uncomfortable, messy, the kind of thing we'd rather ignore. But here's the kicker. When we refuse to acknowledge shame, it doesn't just disappear. Instead, it creeps into our lives in sneaky ways, and perfectionism is one of its favorite disguises. As someone who's spent years untangling my own perfectionist tendencies, and now proudly calls myself a good enoughist, I've learned that we need to debunk the myths around perfectionism to really understand its grip on us. Let's be clear. Perfectionism isn't about self-improvement or striving to be your best. It's not about growth. It's the exhausting belief that if we just do everything flawlessly, we can dodge criticism, judgment, and yes, shame. Think of it like dragging around a 20-ton shield, convinced it's keeping you safe when really it's just weighing you down. Perfectionism isn't about you, it's about everyone else. What will they think? Will they approve? It's a performance, not progress. And for so many of us, it starts early: praise for good grades, perfect manners, people-pleasing, looking the part. Slowly, we internalize the lie: I am only as valuable as what I achieve. But here's the truth. Real growth isn't about pleasing the crowd. It's about asking, how can I grow? Not how can I impress? That shift. That's where freedom begins. Recognizing the gap between healthy ambition and perfectionism is key to dropping your defenses and truly living. Studies reveal that chasing perfection actually sabotages achievement. It's a fast track to anxiety, burnout, and a life stuck on pause. That paralysis. It's the moments we let slip by because we're terrified of putting something flawed into the world. It's the dreams we abandon, convinced we'll stumble or let someone down. For perfectionists, every risk feels like walking a tightrope with their self-worth dangling below. So here's my take, crafted after wrestling with this myself, because, let's be real, slapping a label on our struggles somehow makes them easier to tackle. This definition has become a game changer, and honestly, it's the one people ask for most. Perfectionism is a toxic cycle, a mental trap that whispers, if I nail every detail, if I never slip up, maybe I can dodge the sting of shame or criticism. But here's the brutal truth: perfect doesn't exist. It's a mirage. Worse yet, perfectionism isn't about being flawless. It's about desperately hoping others think you are. And guess what? You'll never control what people see. The irony. The harder you chase perfection, the more shame and blame you invite. When things go sideways, perfectionists don't question the system. They double down, convinced they just didn't try hard enough. If only I'd done more, been better. Sound familiar? Breaking free starts with admitting we're all human, prone to mistakes, judgment, and messy moments. Build resilience against shame. Treat yourself with the kindness you'd give a friend. That's where the magic happens. In embracing the cracks, we uncover courage, empathy, and real connection. Perfectionism isn't a yes or no trait. It's a spectrum. Some feel it in fleeting moments of self-doubt. For others, it's a relentless, exhausting loop. My own fix: tackling it piece by piece, learning to sit with the discomfort of good enough. Because life's too short to wait for perfect. It hit me like a lightning bolt. The real difference between chasing perfection and pursuing healthy growth. This wasn't just an idea anymore. It sank deep into my bones. Facing our fears and rewiring our inner dialogue. That's the game changer when it comes to breaking free from perfectionism. Let me paint you a picture. Like so many women, I've wrestled with body image, confidence, and the messy dance between food and emotions. But here's the kicker. Perfectionism and healthy striving sound nothing alike. Perfectionism hisses in your ear. None of my clothes fit. I'm disgusting. I don't deserve love until I fix myself. Meanwhile, healthy striving whispers, I'm doing this for me, to feel strong, to honor my body. My worth isn't tied to a number. If I believe I'm enough now, I'll open the door to courage and connection. I've got this. The shift, revolutionary, perfectionism didn't make me thinner. It just drove me straight to the peanut butter jar. And yeah, sometimes I had to fake confidence until it felt real. I called it imperfection practice. Case in point, one evening mid-chaos, friends showed up unannounced. My daughter Ellen, then 9, yelled, "Mom, Don and Julie are here." The house looked like a tornado hit it, and I could hear her panic. "Oh no, Mom's gonna lose it." But instead, I threw on jeans, grinned, and said, "How fun? Who cares about the mess?" Cue the serenity prayer mantra. So how do we stop perfectionism from wrecking our lives? I asked people who radiated authenticity, and their answers were gold. First, they own their flaws, no shame, just honesty. Second, they cut everyone, including themselves, some slack. Their motto, "We're all doing our best." Their courage and kindness clearly grew from how they treated themselves. For years, I thought these were separate traits until I stumbled on Dr. Kristen Neff's research. Self-compassion isn't just nice, it's necessary. One moment of it can flip your day. A lifetime of it. That changes everything. Dr. Neff, a professor at Austin, runs a lab dedicated to studying this very thing. Her work, a roadmap to embracing our messy, glorious selves. Bonus twist, ever notice how kids mirror our reactions? That day, Ellen watched me choose joy over panic, and later, she started leaving her room messy without freaking out. Progress, not perfection. Dr. Neff breaks down self-compassion into 3 core parts: treating yourself with warmth instead of harsh judgment, recognizing that everyone struggles, you're not alone in this, and staying mindful without drowning in negative emotions. Self-kindness means cutting yourself some slack when things go wrong. No more beating yourself up over every little mistake. Common humanity is about realizing that failure and insecurity are universal, not just your personal curse. Mindfulness. It's finding that sweet spot between numbing out and spiraling into drama. You can't ignore pain and heal from it. The trick is to acknowledge emotions without letting them hijack your entire identity. What really stands out in Neff's work is her take on mindfulness. Most people assume it's just about facing discomfort head-on, but she flips the script. It's also about not blowing things out of proportion. For recovering perfectionists like me, that's a game changer. Take this ridiculous example. I once emailed an author to request permission to quote her, carefully pasting the exact passage for context. She agreed, but pointed out I'd botched her name in the signature. Cue the internal meltdown. She must think I'm a total fraud. How could I be so careless? Not quite a shame spiral, but close. Then I glanced at this very chapter draft beside me and laughed. Brené, breathe. It's a typo, not a felony. Here's the thing, perfectionism is contagious. We pass it to our kids, crank up workplace stress and strain relationships. But so is compassion. When we stop crucifying ourselves over tiny flubs, we build up enough grace to offer others. Like when my friend Ellen panics over misspelling her professor's name, do I scold her? Or say, happens to the best of us. Last week I called my editor by the wrong name in a meeting. Funny how one typo can reveal so much. The choice isn't between perfection and chaos. It's between rigidity and kindness. And guess which one leaves room to actually enjoy life? Kids pick up self-compassion by watching how we treat ourselves. And when we model kindness, it gives everyone around us permission to drop the act and be real. Dig deep, here's how. Get deliberate. One game changer for me was stumbling across Dr. Neff's self-compassion scale. A quick quiz that breaks down where you shine, self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness, and where you might be tripping yourself up, self-judgment, isolation, overthinking. Turns out, I'm solid on recognizing we're all in this together and staying present but cutting myself slack. That's a work in progress. You can find the test and tons of resources on her site, no fancy links, just Google it. Get inspired. Let's be honest, most of us are exhausted from pretending we've got it all together. There's this killer line from Leonard Cohen's Anthem that snaps me out of my perfectionist spirals. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Think about it. We waste so much energy patching up flaws. The messy kitchen, the half-baked draft, those jeans that definitely shrunk in the wash when the cracks are what make us human. Imperfections aren't failures, they're proof we're alive and in this mess together. Get going. Some mornings I roll out of bed and whisper, today just showing up counts. No grand gestures needed. So how do you dig deep? Funny thing, resilience isn't about polishing the past. It's about stitching the scraps into something stronger. Speaking of resilience, researchers have been obsessed with it since the 70s. Why do some people bounce back from disaster like it's a trampoline, while others get stuck in the rubble? From therapists to cops to pastors, everyone wants the secret. In my interviews, I kept hearing these raw, radiant stories. People who turned trauma into triumph, not by being bulletproof, but by staying real under pressure. Turns out, resilience isn't magic. It's a mix of grit, grace, and those little daily habits that keep you from shattering when life throws a brick. New detail. Ever notice how the most resilient people often have a stupidly simple ritual? Coffee at sunrise, a dog walk, belting off-key in the shower, tiny anchors in the chaos. Bottom line, you don't need to be unbreakable, just willing to keep picking up the pieces, laughing at the cracks. What builds true resilience? When you dive into the latest studies, 5 key traits consistently show up in people who bounce back from adversity. First, they're quick thinkers, adept at finding solutions even in tough spots. They don't hesitate to ask for help when needed. There's an unshakable confidence that they can steer their emotions and handle challenges. Strong social ties matter too. Whether it's family, friends, or a tight-knit community, they're never truly alone. But here's the twist. While these factors are crucial, my research uncovered something deeper. At first, I assumed resilience was just another piece of living wholeheartedly, like courage or self-worth. Yet the stories I collected had a common thread beyond grit: spirituality. Not religion in the traditional sense, but a profound belief in something bigger, a force binding us all through love and compassion. Picture this. A single mom in Texas finds strength in quiet moments by the lake, while a veteran in Brooklyn meditates in his tiny apartment. A college student in Oregon talks about the universe's energy, while her grandmother prays in a church pew. Different paths, same core connection. That's the heartbeat of resilience. From this foundation, 3 game-changing habits emerged. 1. Holding on to hope. Turns out it's not just a fluffy feeling, it's a mental muscle. 2. Staying awake to reality. No rose-colored glasses, just clear-eyed awareness. 3. Ditching the emotional numbing, because facing discomfort head-on is where growth happens. Now about hope, it's been hijacked by greeting cards. Psychologist C.R. Snyder cracked the code. Hope isn't wishful thinking, it's a strategic mindset. Think of it as your brain's GPS, recalculating routes when life throws detours. And power. That's a whole other myth we'll unpack. But first, ever noticed how the toughest storms make the deepest roots? Hope isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's a mindset built on 3 key ingredients: clear goals, creative problem solving, and unshakable self-belief. In other words, hope kicks in when we can define what we want, our destination, map out how to get there, even if we hit detours, and trust in our ability to make it happen. The best part: hope isn't something you're born with, it's a skill you learn, often from the people around you. Parents, for instance, shape hopeful kids by providing structure, reliability, and encouragement. But here's the kicker. Our culture's obsession with instant gratification is a hope killer. If we expect success to be quick and effortless, we crumble at the first obstacle. The hopeful among us, they roll up their sleeves and think, this might take time, but I've got this. On the flip side, some of us, myself included, used to believe that suffering was a prerequisite for anything meaningful. Turns out that's just as toxic as expecting everything to be a breeze. Hope thrives in balance, recognizing that some goals demand grit while others might actually be enjoyable. Disappointment, it's part of the deal, but so is resilience. Whether I'm in the classroom or working with educators, one thing's clear: hope isn't magic. It's a choice, one that requires flexibility, persistence, and a whole lot of self-trust. And yeah, sometimes it means admitting you were wrong. Again, lately, I've been noticing a troubling trend. Kids today seem to expect everything handed to them without putting in the work, mistaking entitlement for real confidence. There's a big difference between thinking, "I deserve this just because I exist," and believing, "I can earn this through effort." When you mix that fragile mindset with the fear of failure and the pressure to perform, you get a generation drowning in self-doubt and hopelessness. That's a dangerous spiral. It makes people feel trapped, like they have no control over their own lives. But here's the thing: power isn't a dirty word. Dr. King got it right. Real power is about making change happen. Think about it. How do you feel when you're stuck in a situation you can't control? It's suffocating. That's why we need resilience. Not just to survive, but to push through the noise of doubt and fear. If we want to live fully, we have to believe we can shape our own futures. Now, let's talk about the real villains feeding this cycle. The endless, impossible standards shoved in our faces every single day. From Instagram filters to commercials selling perfect lives, we're bombarded with messages telling us we're not enough, not thin enough, not successful enough, not anything enough. And let's be honest, you can't just unplug from it all. Trying to dodge media is like trying to avoid oxygen. Good luck with that. Our brains are wired to believe what we see, which makes living in this airbrushed, hyper-curated world downright toxic. So how do we fight back? By sharpening our critical awareness. Ask yourself, is this real or just clever marketing? Does this actually reflect a healthy life, or is it designed to make me feel inadequate? Spoiler alert, if it makes you question your worth, someone's probably profiting off it. Shame plays dirty too. It zooms in on our flaws until they're all we see. Ever catch yourself thinking, why is my life so chaotic when everyone else's looks perfect? That's shame doing its worst. But here's the truth: nobody's life is a highlight reel. The mess, the noise, the chaos, that's real. And learning to spot the difference is the first step toward resilience. Ever feel like you're the only one not living some picture-perfect life straight out of a glossy magazine? Like everyone else is out there having mind-blowing romance while you're just not. Yeah, me too. But here's the kicker: when you step back, you realize most people are wrestling with the same insecurities. That moment when you think, wait, you feel this way too, I'm not broken, that's the game changer. Turns out, we're bombarded daily with messages telling us we're not enough, not attractive enough, successful enough, whatever enough. Gene Kilborn and Jackson Katz nailed it in their work. Media doesn't just sell products, it sells impossible standards. Kilborn's Killing Us Softly 4 and Katz's Tough Guys expose how ads and pop culture warp our sense of normal, fueling everything from body image issues to toxic masculinity. Seriously, watch them. They'll mess you up in the best way. Here's the spiritual gut check. When we buy into those lies, it hollows us out. That's why critical awareness isn't just about smarts, it's soul work and numbing. Oh, we've all been there. My research showed two camps: people who drown hard feelings in distractions, hello, late night ice cream and binge scrolling, and those who lean in even when it hurts. Guess who felt more alive? The ones who let themselves feel, awkward, messy, and all. So next time shame whispers you're the only one, laugh in its face. You're in very crowded company. This discovery became a pivotal moment in my research, leading me to conduct hundreds of interviews to explore how numbing behaviors connect to addiction. What I uncovered was eye-opening. Nearly all of us, whether we realize it or not, rely on habits to dull emotional pain, discomfort, or vulnerability. Addiction isn't just about substances. It's about compulsively escaping those sharp, thorn-like emotions that pierce us when we least expect them. The irony. When we try to mute the pain, we also silence joy, love, and connection. Anticipating emotional discomfort can be so overwhelming that our instinct is to avoid it entirely, grabbing the nearest distraction for instant relief. Some turn to alcohol, endless scrolling, or overworking, while others chase perfectionism, chaotic relationships, or retail therapy. At first, I assumed numbing was purely an addiction issue, but my research revealed something deeper. Everyone does it. The difference: those living wholeheartedly don't avoid the sting. They acknowledge it, sit with it, and move through it. Genetics and brain chemistry absolutely influence addiction, but for many, the struggle isn't about substances. It's about coping in a world that makes feeling unbearable. The traditional disease model doesn't fit everyone, and that's okay. My own sobriety journey, 15 years and counting, taught me that recovery isn't one size fits all. The 12 steps saved my life, but some aspects of the recovery community never quite resonated with me. It wasn't until this research that I understood why. Numbing isn't just an addict's problem, it's a human one. New detail. One interviewee, a teacher named Marcus, described how he replaced late-night binge-watching with journaling, not to fix his anxiety, but to understand it. That shift, he said, made the loneliness less suffocating. Here's the twist. Society sells numbing as self-care. Treat yourself, they say, as if another purchase or cocktail will fill the void. But real resilience, that comes from letting the thorn prick you and realizing you won't bleed out. There's something undeniably powerful about introducing yourself in a recovery meeting with, "Hi, I'm Naim, and I'm an alcoholic." For countless people, those words have been life-changing. But for me, they never quite fit. Don't get me wrong, I'm deeply grateful for my sobriety. It reshaped my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. Yet saying that phrase always left me feeling oddly hollow, like I was wearing someone else's shoes. Maybe it was because I didn't just quit one thing. I quit everything all at once. My first sponsor was baffled by my situation. She called it a very high bottom since I hadn't hit rock bottom. I just wanted to strip away the party girl act so I could figure out who I really was. One night she studied me for a long moment before declaring, "You've got the sampler platter of addictions. A little of this, a little of that. Honestly, you should probably ditch the booze, cigarettes, stress eating, and meddling in your family's drama just to be safe." I remember laughing and slamming my fork down on the table. Great. Guess I'll be living in meeting halls from now on. Spoiler alert. I never found my meeting. I quit drinking and smoking the day after grad school, slogged through enough meetings to work the steps, and racked up a year of sobriety. But deep down, I knew why it never clicked. My real issue wasn't just substances. It was my lifelong habit of running from discomfort. Growing up, no one taught me how to sit with uncertainty, so I became a master at taking the edge off, whatever that edge happened to be. And let me tell you, there's no 12-step group for that. Tried explaining it once. Purists were not amused. For me, the problem wasn't just the late nights, cheap beer, and cigarettes. It was the everything else, the mindless snacking, obsessive email checking, overworking, overplanning, and the relentless need to stay busy. Anything to avoid that gnawing sense of vulnerability. When I joked about being a take-the-edge-off-aholic, friends would nervously confess their own habits. "I have 2 glasses of wine every night. Is that bad? I shop when I'm stressed. I can't stand being still." Years of research later, I'm convinced we all do this. The real question is, does your go-to escape, whether it's food, shopping, work, or even perfectionism, keep you from being honest with yourself? Does it block you from setting boundaries or believing you're enough? Are you using it to dodge the messy, uncomfortable parts of life? Shifting my perspective from seeing my struggles as addiction to seeing them as avoidance changed everything. Because once you stop running, you realize the edge you've been dulling. That's where life actually begins. This journey deepened my dedication to staying sober, healthy, and spiritually grounded. If I'm being brutally honest, there are days when I'd love to drown my fears in a sugary pastry, a cold beer, and mindless scrolling. But that kind of escape only leaves me feeling hollow. Turns out, you can't just mute the hard emotions without silencing the good ones too. One of the most surprising lessons from my research: emotional numbing is picky. Shut down the pain and you dim the joy right along with it. Back when I was trying to soften life's rough edges, I didn't realize I was also sanding down the highs, laughter, love, those electric moments of pure happiness. Now, I lean into joy even when it leaves me raw because that's part of the deal. Real joy isn't some fluffy, safe thing. It's fierce, demanding, even a little dangerous. Loving deeply, chasing dreams without a safety net, savoring fleeting wins, they all come with risk. And if we can't handle discomfort, we miss out on the best parts of life. Here's the kicker. Research shows that overwhelming happiness can trigger a relapse just as easily as crushing grief. You can't cherry-pick emotions, stuffing the bad ones in a drawer while keeping the good ones on display. That just sets up a cruel cycle: numb the pain, starve the joy, then wonder why everything feels heavier. But when you stop running from vulnerability, that's where the magic happens. It's like flexing a muscle. The more you practice sitting with discomfort, the more resilience you build. Now about that big question: does spirituality matter? Absolutely. Fear, shame, isolation, they'll eat resilience alive. The antidote: believing we're not alone, that there's something bigger stitching love and meaning into our mess. And no, it's not about rules or rituals. It's the daily practice, the small acts of faith, connection, and grit that heals and holds us together. For me, spirituality isn't just about faith. It's about finding that deep connection with something greater, whether that's through the quiet beauty of a sunrise, the warmth of shared laughter with friends, or the way a favorite song can lift my soul. Everyone's path is different, but what matters is that it keeps us grounded, especially when life throws its hardest punches: loss, stress, or just the weight of everyday chaos. Without that anchor, it's too easy to feel adrift, like we're shrinking under the pressure instead of rising above it. But when we remember we're part of something bigger, loneliness fades. Here's a trick I picked up from a friend in recovery: a quick daily check-in called the vowel check. Abstinence, whatever that means for you, good luck defining it when it comes to binge watching or late-night snacks. Exercise, even if it's just pacing while on the phone. I for self-care: did I actually take a breath today? Others: did I lend a hand or just scroll past someone's struggle? Unexpressed emotions, holding onto those is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to keel over. And why, hell yeah, what went right today? There's a quote I keep coming back to from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. We're like stained glass, bright when the sun's out, but our real beauty, that shows up in the dark when we've got our own light. And isn't that the truth? The most resilient people I've met glow from the inside, no matter what life throws at them. Some mornings my version of getting going is less motivational speech and more staring at the ceiling, whispering, "Help me not lose it today." But prayer, meditation, even just listing 3 things I'm grateful for, it shifts something. Funny how life teaches you things in pairs: love and belonging. Turns out you can't fake your way into one without the other. For years, I twisted myself into a pretzel trying to fit in, thinking acceptance would magically make me like myself. Spoiler, it doesn't work. Real belonging starts with showing up as you, flaws, weird laugh and all. And joy. I used to think gratitude followed happiness like a side effect. But no, it's the other way around. The more you practice gratitude, the more joy sneaks up on you, even on the messy days. Who knew? Well, besides every wise person ever. After gathering hundreds of personal stories about joy and gratitude, I noticed 3 undeniable themes that kept surfacing. Every single person who radiated joy in their lives, without fail, credited their daily gratitude rituals as the source. They didn't just feel thankful, they actively practiced it, weaving it into their lives like a spiritual discipline. Many described joy as something deeper than fleeting happiness. It wasn't just about good luck or favorable circumstances, but a conscious choice to engage with the world through gratitude. What struck me most was how often the word practice came up. As someone who used to believe knowledge alone could transform lives, this was a wake-up call. Honestly, it took a personal crisis, my 2007 spiritual reckoning, to finally accept that theory means nothing without action. Take my so-called yoga attitude, for example. I love the philosophy, own the leggings, and preach mindfulness, but ask me to hold a downward dog, total disaster. Turns out, good intentions don't magically turn into flexibility or balance. The people I interviewed didn't just think about gratitude, they did something about it. Journals, prayers, even spontaneous shouts of "I'm grateful for this." In the middle of chaos, joy, they showed me, isn't passive, it's a muscle you strengthen. And here's the kicker. One woman I spoke with kept a gratitude jar by her door. Every night she'd drop in a note about something small, like her neighbor's laugh or the smell of rain. By December, she'd pull them all out and realize her year was fuller than she'd ever noticed. Happiness. That's like catching a sunny day. But joy. It's the stubborn light that stays even when storms roll in. As Adela Rogers St. John's put it, joy doesn't just brighten your mood, it fills you with something unshakable. And according to the research, that difference isn't just poetic, it's life-changing. During my interviews, a common theme emerged. People often clarified, feeling grateful and joyful doesn't mean I'm happy every single day. Curious, I'd press further. Can you describe what joy and gratitude feel like when happiness isn't present? The responses echoed one another. Happiness is fleeting, tied to life's ups and downs, while joy runs deeper, anchored in spirit and thankfulness. What became clear was that neither joy nor happiness is a permanent state. Happiness flickers like a candle in the wind, dependent on external events, a promotion, a vacation, a sunny day. Joy, though, it's more like an underground river, always flowing beneath the surface, fed by gratitude and something bigger than ourselves. But here's the twist. Joy doesn't just sit there quietly. When it hits, it's overwhelming, almost like being caught off guard by a wave of warmth. It's not just contentment, it's a full-body, soul-deep recognition of connection. To dig deeper, I turned to existing research and stumbled on something unexpected, a theologian's take. Anne Robertson, a Methodist pastor and writer, traced the roots of these emotions back to ancient Greek. Makarios, their word for happiness, described the privilege of wealth, freedom from everyday struggles. Chero, their word for joy, was something else entirely. The Greeks saw it as the soul's highest state, a divine gift tied to wisdom, not circumstance. Its opposite wasn't sadness, but fear. Let's be real, I'm all for happiness. I've dog-eared pages in Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project and nodded along to Tal Ben-Shahar's work. But joy, that's the game changer. It's not about chasing fleeting highs. It's about building a life where gratitude is the foundation. Of course, that's easier said than done. Sometimes the biggest roadblocks are the shadows we don't even see: scarcity, fear, the nagging sense of not enough. I remember one evening sprawled on my couch, laptop untouched, journal in hand. Exhausted, I just stared at the string lights draped over my dining room doorway, their tiny bulbs flickering like distant stars. Those lights. They're my guilty pleasure, cheap, cheerful, and oddly comforting. But that night, they also made me think. Joy isn't about waiting for the grand moments. It's about stringing together the small, sparkly ones, and not letting fear dim them. There's something magical about twinkle lights. They turn ordinary spaces into something enchanting, which is why I keep them glowing in my home no matter the season. One evening, curled up with a notebook, I found myself lost in thought under their soft glow, and I scribbled this down. Joy isn't some never-ending spotlight. It flickers, tiny, bright sparks in the middle of everyday life. We get so caught up chasing big, dramatic highs that we miss the quiet magic of a shared laugh or a perfect cup of coffee. And sometimes, we're so scared of the dark that we don't let ourselves bask in the light when it comes. A life full of joy isn't one blinding beam. It's those little moments strung together like fairy lights, held up by trust, gratitude, and a stubborn belief that good things are worth celebrating. If you followed my blog, you know I call this my TGIF practice. Every Friday, I share what I'm trusting, what I'm grateful for, what inspires me, and how I'm leaning into faith. The comments, they floor me. Because here's the thing, joy and gratitude aren't just warm fuzzies, they're brave acts. We're a culture wired for anxiety, allergic to vulnerability. We brace ourselves thinking, if I let myself feel this happy, it'll vanish. If I say I'm grateful, the universe will smack me down. Here's where it gets real. Motherhood cranked my fear dial to 11. For years, every time I looked at my kids and felt that heart-bursting love, my brain would hijack it with disaster scenarios. What if I lose them? What if this joy is just a setup for pain? I thought I was the only one until I stood in front of 500 parents and admitted it. The room went dead silent. I panicked. Great, now they all think I'm unhinged. Then a sob from the back. A voice from the front yelled, "Why do we do this to ourselves?" Turns out, I wasn't alone. None of us. The room buzzed with the kind of energy you'd expect at a sold-out concert, except instead of music fans, it was parents nodding along like they'd just heard the secret to life. And honestly, they kind of had. That moment when happiness hits you so hard it almost hurts. Yeah, most of us know it, that split second before fear creeps in, whispering, what if it doesn't last? Here's the truth. Joy isn't the absence of fear. It's the light that shines brighter because of the dark. But when we let fear take the wheel, we're basically dimming our own glow. Let's talk scarcity, because these days anxiety's running the show. We cling to what we love, terrified it'll vanish, mad there's no receipt guaranteeing forever. So we armor up. If I don't let myself feel too happy, losing won't wreck me. Spoiler, that logic's broken. Gratitude and joy aren't just confetti for the good times, they're the life rafts when storms hit. Then there's Lynn Twist, who drops truth bombs in the soul of money. She calls out the never enough script we've all memorized. Didn't sleep enough. Don't have enough time. Not successful enough. By the time we've brushed our teeth, we've tallied a dozen ways we're falling short. It's exhausting. And hilarious if you think about it, like we're all competing in the Olympics of self-doubt. But here's the plot twist. Sufficiency isn't about stuffing your life with more. It's about stepping off the hamster wheel and realizing you've had enough all along. So next time your brain screams not enough, hit pause, breathe. And maybe, just maybe, let joy when sufficiency isn't about numbers or hitting some arbitrary benchmark. It's not the halfway point between barely scraping by and having more than you need. It's not something you can measure or count. Instead, it's a mindset, a way of seeing the world where you recognize that what you have is enough, and that you are enough. It's an inner knowing, something we can tap into any time by shifting our perspective. Sufficiency is a choice, a deliberate focus on appreciating what's already here rather than chasing what's missing. Scarcity, on the other hand, feeds those nagging doubts and fears we all carry. Through my research, I've seen how many of us fall into the trap of believing that only the extraordinary, big achievements, fame, wealth, can bring happiness. In my book, I Thought It Was Just Me, I wrote about how our culture often ties worth to visibility and success, dismissing the quiet, everyday contributions of ordinary people. We've somehow convinced ourselves that ordinary equals boring or worse, meaningless. But here's the twist. The people who have taught me the most about joy weren't the ones chasing grand achievements. They were the ones who'd faced deep loss, parents who'd lost children, survivors of violence, those who'd endured trauma. And what did they cherish most? The small, ordinary moments, laughing over breakfast, a quiet walk, the sound of a loved one's voice. Their wisdom was a wake-up call. Joy isn't found in the extraordinary. It's woven into the everyday if we just slow down enough to notice. As Marianne Williamson puts it, joy is what happens when we let ourselves see how good things already are. Dig deep, get deliberate. When fear and scarcity creep in, I don't ignore them. I name them, then flip the script. Out loud, I'll say, I'm feeling shaky right now, and that's okay. But I'm also grateful for. It sounds simple, but this practice has rewired my brain to hold more joy. Get inspired. The magic isn't in the highlight reel, it's in the outtakes. Watching my kids race each other home from school, the chaos of family dinners, even the way sunlight hits the kitchen in the morning. When I started valuing these moments as the real treasures, my definition of success completely shifted. Get going. Gratitude isn't just a solo practice in our house, it's a team sport. From sharing thanks before meals to scribbling down little joys in a family gratitude jar, we're building a life where appreciation is the default. This whole journey has pushed me in ways I never expected, especially when it comes to faith and intuition. When my research first pointed to spirituality as a key part of living wholeheartedly, my inner skeptic winced. Sorry, logic, you're still my ride or die. But here's the thing. Sometimes the deepest truths don't fit neatly into spreadsheets. And that's more than okay. I turned to Steve with a grin and said, "Guess what? We're diving into intuition and blind faith now. How wild is that?" He just smirked and shot back, "Why are you shocked? You've always run on gut feelings and trust anyway." His response caught me off guard. I plopped down beside him, flipping open a dictionary. Okay, sure, I trust my instincts, but intuition, that's a whole different beast. Listen to this definition. Direct perception of truth, no reasoning required. Steve laughed. Maybe the dictionary's outdated. You're about to rewrite it, wouldn't be your first time. For the next year, I threw myself into studying intuition and faith, gathering stories and insights to really understand how they work. And what I discovered, intuition isn't some mystical whisper. It's your brain working overtime behind the scenes. Psychologists say it's like a lightning-fast puzzle solver, pulling from memories, knowledge, and experiences to piece together a gut feeling. Sometimes it nudges you toward action, other times it screams, "Hold up, get more info." The real kicker. Our obsession with certainty drowns out that inner voice. We hate not knowing, so we ignore our instincts and start crowdsourcing opinions instead. What would you do? Is this a terrible idea? Sound familiar? Here's the irony. When we poll everyone around us, it's usually because we've lost touch with our own judgment. We want backup, someone to share the blame if things go south. And trust me, I get it. As someone who literally researches opinions for a living, I've been guilty of oversurveying too. But now, when I catch myself asking too many people for advice, it's a flashing warning sign. You're scared to trust yourself. Funny how research can turn your own habits into red flags. Trusting your gut isn't just about getting quick answers. Sometimes, your intuition tells you that you don't have enough clarity yet. Our obsession with certainty can actually drown out that quiet voice warning us to pause, double-check the facts, or question our assumptions. Ever catch yourself thinking, "Screw it, I'm doing this now, I'm overanalyzing. This is exhausting. I just want it settled." Not knowing is driving me crazy. Action feels better than waiting. Rushing into major choices often means we're avoiding the uncomfortable truths that might surface if we slowed down. Deep down, we suspect digging deeper could shatter the outcome we're attached to. My personal rule: if I'm dreading the research or avoiding the math, that's a red flag. When impatience takes over, it's worth asking, am I running from the discomfort of sitting with uncertainty? Here's the twist. Intuition isn't some magic 8-ball. Sometimes the wisest thing it reveals is that we're not ready to decide. After years of research, here's how I define it. Intuition is less about having answers and more about embracing the unknown, trusting the mix of gut feelings, lived experience, logic, and even faith that guide us. Speaking of faith, no, it's not the opposite of reason. The real conflict, our desperate need to be right and our terror of ambiguity. We treat them like rivals, picking sides instead of letting them coexist. Sure, they clash. I've felt that tension in my own life. But the deeper issue, fear, fear of the unanswered, fear of being proven wrong. Truth is, we need both to navigate life's unpredictability. Early in my interviews with people living wholeheartedly, I kept hearing phrases like holding on to faith or my faith got me through. At first, I assumed it meant believing everything happens for a reason, which never sat right with me. Using spirituality to explain suffering. That's not faith, that's slapping a band-aid of false certainty on pain. But the people I spoke to described something richer. Faith isn't about answers. It's the courage to believe without proof and the grit to release the need for guarantees. New detail. One interviewee, a firefighter, told me how he learned this during a rescue mission gone wrong. Faith wasn't praying for a miracle, he said. It was accepting I might not save everyone and still showing up. So next time your gut hesitates, don't ignore it. Maybe the message isn't go or stop, but wait, you're not done learning yet. One thing that surprised me is how faith and uncertainty don't always fall along expected lines. It's not just scientists wrestling with doubt. Sometimes it's the deeply religious clinging to rigid answers instead of embracing mystery. The irony. The word faith has somehow twisted into demanding absolute certainty, when real faith thrives in the unknown. Richard Rohr put it perfectly. Scientists dance with theories like dark matter and quantum uncertainty, while some believers demand airtight answers, mistaking inflexibility for devotion. Faith, at its core, means stepping into the unknown, choosing to love and live fully even when there are no guarantees. Letting go of certainty, that's my Everest. My body rebels, heart racing, palms sweating when I don't have control. In those moments, I have to force stillness. Sometimes that means locking myself in the laundry room for 5 minutes of quiet, or taking an extra loop around the neighborhood just to breathe. The 2007 meltdown that became my spiritual wake-up call. Yeah, that wasn't pretty. But Anne Lamott's words shattered something in me. The opposite of faith isn't doubt, it's certainty. Books like Sue Monk Kids, When the Heart Waits, and Pema Chodron's Comfortable with Uncertainty became lifelines. And Seelho's The Alchemist. That line about intuition being the soul diving into life's current. Chills. When panic hits, I reach for the serenity prayer like a life raft. Grant me the serenity to accept what I can't change. You know the drill. But digging deeper, for me, it's nostalgia. Some of my brightest childhood flashes are from our time in New Orleans, in that quirky pink duplex near Chilane. My mom and I would paint wooden keychains for hours, turtles, snails, while her friends, decked in bell-bottoms, hauled groceries from the French Quarter. The smell of stuffed mirlitons simmering, the thrill of being trusted to cook solo one Sunday. That's where my heart remembers how to trust growing up. I was told I could create anything I wanted, using whatever ingredients I chose. So naturally, I whipped up oatmeal raisin cookies, but with a twist, swapping cinnamon for crawfish boil spices. The result? A kitchen that reeked for a week. My mom was just as hands-on, sewing matching shift dresses for herself, me, and even my doll, who got her own miniature version. Those memories of making things, so vivid I can still feel the fabric and smell the spices, are wrapped in warmth and nostalgia. But around age 9, that creative spark dimmed. It was right after we left our cozy Garden District home in New Orleans for a sprawling suburban house in Houston. Back in New Orleans, our walls were alive with family-made art, and homemade curtains framed every window. It wasn't just decoration, it was necessity, but to me it was magic. Houston was a different world. Walking into neighbors' houses felt like stepping into a hotel lobby, Think Holiday Inn vibes with stiff drapes, matching furniture sets, and fake plants perched just so. Everything looked polished, impersonal, and eerily identical. School was another shock. Gone were the Catholic school uniforms. Suddenly, fitting in meant mall-bought outfits, not handmade ones. My dad, once a law student burning the midnight oil at Loyola, now wore a suit and joined the army of commuters heading to corporate oil jobs. The shift wasn't just geographical, it was a total lifestyle overhaul. My parents got swept up in the race for achievements and status, and creativity took a backseat to conformity and competition. At first glance, those two seem opposite, but they're not. Comparison thrives when we measure ourselves against people just like us, neighbors, teammates, classmates. It's a trap that turns life into a never-ending game of keeping up, where originality gets lost in the shuffle. New detail. I remember one afternoon, staring at a perfectly arranged bowl of plastic fruit in our new living room, missing the lopsided clay sculptures my brother and I used to make. The silence of that house, so unlike the constant hum of creativity back in New Orleans, hit me harder than I expected. The move didn't just change our address, it rewired how we saw ourselves. And somewhere in that transition, the joy of making things got buried under the pressure to measure UPWE. Don't measure our homes against the sprawling estates in the next county. We size them up against the neighbor's lawns right next door. Comparison traps us in a suffocating cycle. Blend in, but somehow shine brighter than everyone else. Forget self-acceptance or authenticity. It's about keeping up while secretly trying to outdo the Joneses. No wonder we're exhausted, pouring all that energy into fitting in and one-upping each other instead of nurturing joy, gratitude, or real creativity. My friend Laura Williams nailed it when she said, "Comparison steals happiness." I'll be floating on cloud nine, thrilled with my life, my family, my progress, until one sideways glance at someone else's highlight reel sends me spiraling. Growing up, I convinced myself creativity was frivolous. By adulthood, I'd swapped paintbrushes for productivity, dismissing art as a waste of time. I'm just not the creative type, I'd shrug, while secretly scoffing at hobbies like scrapbooking. Who had time for that when there were resumes to polish and goals to crush? By 40, my indifference had curdled into outright disdain, like creativity was either self-indulgent or downright flaky. Funny how the things we resist hardest often hide the deepest wounds. Looking back, maybe avoiding that part of myself was easier than admitting how much I missed it. Then this research flipped everything. Here's the truth. I'm not creative is a myth. Creativity isn't some elite club, it's a choice. Either we use it or we let it wither under fear and neglect. Our most meaningful mark on the world. It'll come from creating, period. Cook, build, sing, glue macaroni to construction paper, just make something. A month after facing these findings, I signed up for the most random class imaginable, gourd painting. Dead serious. Turns out, reclaiming creativity isn't about talent. It's about refusing to let comparison rob you of what makes life vibrant. That day with my mom and Ellen changed everything for me. It sparked something inside I didn't even know was there. After years of feeling stuck, I suddenly couldn't stop creating. I picked up a camera, started seeing the world differently, and realized beauty was hiding in plain sight. The rust on a mailbox, the colors in a thrift store painting, even the way light hit my coffee cup in the morning. My whole family got swept up in it too. The kids are always elbow-deep in glue and glitter. Steve and I edit goofy home movies on our Macs, and Ellen's already planning her future, either running a kitchen or living like Ali Edwards, this incredible artist who makes life itself feel like a masterpiece. Meanwhile, Charlie's convinced his calling is opening a booger-themed shop. Hey, at least he's thinking outside the box. Then it hit me. I'd been creative all along without realizing it. Like writer William Plomer said, creativity isn't about pulling ideas from thin air. It's about linking things nobody else thought to connect. My job, literally built on making those links. So why had I spent so much time doubting myself? Comparison is a trap, and breaking free isn't a one-time fix. It's a daily choice to focus on your own path instead of obsessing over who's ahead or behind. When you're creating, those words stop mattering. Dig deep, get deliberate. If you treat creativity like an afterthought, it'll stay that way. I block off time every week, no excuses, for photos, art with the kids, even if it's just finger painting disasters. Funny thing, the more I prioritize it, the smoother everything else flows. Get inspired. My yearly retreat with the Love Bombers, this wild, brilliant crew of artists I met online, fuels me for months. Surround yourself with people who get it, who push you to see the world differently. Get going, sign up for that class that terrifies you. Mess up, feel awkward. I took a pottery workshop last winter and made what can only be described as abstract mugs. But who cares? The point is to try. There were moments during my research where I felt totally out of place, like an anthropologist studying some elusive tribe, the wholehearted as I called them. Their habits baffled me at first, especially this idea of unapologetic creativity. It took time to understand, but once I did, game over, no more doubting, just making. I once joked to a coworker, "These wholehearted folks seem to waste a lot of time." She raised an eyebrow and asked, "Waste time? What do you mean?" I hesitated, struggling to explain. "They just enjoy themselves. They laugh, mess around, do random stuff that makes them happy." She tilted her head, still puzzled. "You mean like hobbies or going to the gym?" "Sort of," I said, "but less structured. More spontaneous. I need to figure this out." Looking back, it's almost embarrassing. How could I have missed something so obvious? It was play, pure, unfiltered play, a cornerstone of wholehearted living. The realization hit me while watching my kids, seeing the same carefree joy in them that I'd heard described by the people I interviewed. These adults weren't just productive, they knew how to let loose. Of course, my research started off hilariously wrong. Pro tip: never ever search adult play online. I spent 5 frantic minutes slamming my laptop shut like I was in some bizarre arcade game. Whack that tab. After that disaster, I stumbled onto Dr. Stuart Brown's work. A psychiatrist and founder of the National Institute for Play, he wrote Play: How It Shapes the Brain, Opens the Imagination, and Invigorates the Soul. His research blew my mind. Play isn't just fun, it's vital. It rewires our brains, builds empathy, and fuels creativity. That's why play and rest go hand in hand. They're both non-negotiable for a healthy life. But here's the kicker. Play has no agenda. We do it simply because it feels good. And in a world obsessed with hustle culture where productivity equals worth, that's borderline revolutionary. The idea of doing something just for joy. For some of us, that's scarier than public speaking. We've convinced ourselves that unless we're grinding 24/7, we're failing. But here's the truth. Play isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. Whether you're a CEO, a parent, or a student, shutting out play doesn't make you stronger. It burns you out. So maybe it's time to stop glorifying exhaustion and start embracing the ridiculous, the silly, the pointless. Because sometimes the most productive thing you can do is absolutely nothing useful at all. He argues, play isn't the opposite of work, depression is. His point: honoring our natural instinct for play can revolutionize how we approach our jobs. Play injects energy and fresh perspective into daily tasks, helps us navigate challenges, and fuels creativity. True play, driven by genuine passion, is the key to finding real fulfillment in what we do. Without it, work eventually becomes unsustainable. Here's the eye-opener. Our need for play mirrors our body's demand for rest, a cornerstone of wholehearted living. To love and live fully, we must honor our need to recharge. Early in my research on rest and sleep deprivation, I was stunned by the fallout of chronic exhaustion. The CDC links poor sleep to serious health risks: diabetes, heart disease, obesity, even depression. And let's talk about drowsy driving, just as deadly as drunk driving, yet entirely avoidable. But somehow, we've turned exhaustion into a twisted badge of honor, treating sleep like an indulgence. The result? A society running on fumes. Those same nagging voices that scoff at play also hiss: skip the nap, real hustlers grind, or push harder, sleep can wait. Newsflash, it can't. We're drowning in stress, raising kids with packed schedules, scrambling for meaning in fleeting achievements. But what if the chase itself is the problem? Living wholeheartedly means rejecting burnout as a trophy and productivity as self-worth. Choosing rest and play, that's rebellion. For my husband Steve and me, ditching the exhaustion mindset was a no-brainer. But putting it into action, a whole different battle. In 2008, we sat down and mapped out what truly keeps our family thriving. One unexpected addition: a strict no work after 8 p.m. rule, which led to some hilariously awkward family game nights. Turns out, forced fun is still fun. We sat down as a family and asked ourselves, what does happiness look like for us when everything's going right? The answers poured in: simple things like getting enough rest, staying active, eating home-cooked meals, taking vacations, attending Sunday services, being fully present with our kids, managing finances without stress, having fulfilling work that doesn't take over our lives, lazy afternoons, and quality time with loved ones. These became our personal recipe for a meaningful life. Then we revisited our old dream list, the one we'd been adding to for years. Every item on it was about achievement or possessions: a bigger house, exotic vacations, career milestones, salary targets. Each one demanded more money, more effort, more striving. But when we held it side by side with our joy and meaning list, the truth hit us: we were already living our dream. The things we thought we needed weren't actually making us happier. They were just keeping us chasing an illusion. Of course, embracing this mindset hasn't been smooth sailing. Some days it clicks perfectly. Other days I catch myself daydreaming about a magazine feature or a kitchen renovation, convinced they'd magically fix everything. Even our daughter Ellen had to adjust. Last year we told her we were scaling back her packed schedule. No more juggling 3 sports, Girl Scouts, and endless extracurriculars. She protested, pointing out that her friends were doing way more. True, some of them were barely sleeping, bouncing between Mandarin lessons and travel soccer. We framed it as part of a bigger shift. I was cutting back my university hours and her dad was switching to a 4-day workweek. Ellen's eyes widened. "Wait, is something wrong?" she asked, bracing for bad news. When we assured her we just wanted more downtime, more game nights, more laughter, her face lit up. "So more TV?" she asked hopefully. "Nope," I laughed. "Just more time to actually be a family." But let's be real, as a parent, this was terrifying. What if we're making a huge mistake? What if busy is the price of success? What if colleges toss her application because she didn't master the violin and fluent French in varsity soccer? The fear creeps in, but then I remember we're choosing joy over hustle, and that's a risk worth taking. New detail: one evening, Ellen surprised us by turning down a friend's sleepover invite. "I just want to stay home and make cookies with you guys," she said. That moment, unplanned, unhurried, was everything our dream list could never buy. What if being ordinary, peaceful, and content is enough? Does that even matter? The truth is, it only matters if we decide it does. If our focus is on what truly fulfills us, then rest and joy become priorities. But if we're chasing external validation, what others expect or praise, we're right back on the treadmill of exhaustion, hustling for self-worth. Today, I'm choosing joy over grind. Dig deep, get deliberate. One of the most transformative things my family ever did was create our joy checklist, a rundown of the little things that make life feel whole. Try it. Write down what makes your days brighter, then compare it to your endless to-do list. The mismatch might shock you. Get inspired. Stuart Brown's research on play and Daniel Pink's A Whole New Mind completely shifted my perspective. If you're craving more balance, dive into their work. Bonus tip, skip the productivity guilt and read them in a hammock. Get going, rebel a little. Cross one obligation off your list today and pencil and do absolutely nothing. So how do you dig deep? When I first uncovered this research, I sprinted to my therapist's office. My life was a mess of stress and my body had started revolting, dizzy spells, near fainting, the works. Anxiety wasn't new, but this physical rebellion was. For years, I juggled academic pressure, family chaos, and my own relentless standards. But as I explored wholehearted living, my body basically staged an intervention. You're not ignoring this anymore. If I pushed too hard, the room would spin until I had to sit down. One session, I groaned to Diana, my therapist, "I can't keep living like this." She gave me that classic therapist pause, infuriatingly patient before asking, "What do you need?" Frustrated, I snapped, "A way to not collapse when I'm stressed." More silence. Then it hit me. The problem wasn't the dizziness, it was the stress itself. I didn't need to power through, I needed to stop. Note, therapist silence is brutal, also wildly effective. The people I studied weren't free from anxiety, they just refused to let it run their lives. They built habits of calm, making stillness non-negotiable. So I did too. And guess what? The room stopped spinning. Calm and stillness might seem interchangeable, but they're not, and both are essential. To me, calm isn't just about keeping emotions in check. It's about stepping back, seeing the bigger picture and responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Picture someone who stays grounded even when things get messy. They acknowledge their emotions without letting fear or anger take the wheel. When I was expecting my daughter Ellen, a friend handed me a little book called Baby Love, a tradition of calm parenting by Maud Britt. Britt's family had generations of midwives in the Netherlands, and their wisdom filled those pages. I can still feel the weight of that book in my hands, sitting in my new rocking chair, my other hand resting on my swollen belly. This is what I want, I thought, to parent with patience, not panic. And you know what? I've gotten pretty good at it, not because it's my natural state, but because I work at it. Every single day, my husband, Steve, has been my secret weapon. Watching him navigate chaos with quiet clarity taught me the power of pausing before reacting. Now I ask myself, do I really have all the facts? And I've seen firsthand how calm can diffuse tension. Panic only breeds more panic. As psychologist Harriet Lerner puts it, anxiety spreads fast, but so does calm. So, what's the choice? Do we add fuel to the fire or do we bring peace to the storm? Choosing calm means committing to practice. Tiny habits make a difference, counting to 10 before speaking, admitting when you need time to think, or recognizing your emotional triggers and rehearsing better responses. A few years back, there was this gut punch of a PSA. A couple screamed, slammed doors, hurled insults. "I hate you. Leave me alone," over and over, leaving viewers baffled. Then suddenly they stopped, joined hands, and walked away. "We're ready now," one said, the message. "Talk to your kids about drugs. It's hard, but it matters." That ad stuck with me. Calm isn't instinctive unless you've seen it modeled, and most of us haven't, so we have to learn it. For me, it starts with something simple, a deep breath. Because sometimes the quietest moments hold the most power. New detail. The rocking chair creaked softly as I read, the sound blending with the hum of the city outside. A tiny pocket of peace before the storm of parenthood. Tone shift. And let's be real, some days, calm feels like trying to fold a fitted sheet. Impossible. But hey, progress over perfection, right? Taking a deep breath before reacting instantly shifts my energy toward calmness. There are moments when my inner voice screams, "I really want to lose it right now." But then I pause and ask, do I even have all the facts? Would panicking actually solve anything? The answer is always a hard number: stillness. though simpler in theory than calm, is way tougher for me to embrace. I used to roll my eyes when people talked about stillness as essential for living wholeheartedly. Whether through meditation, prayer, or just quiet time alone, so many swore by the power of shutting out the noise to ease anxiety. My resistance. Probably because the idea of meditating alone spikes my stress. Every time I try, I feel like a fraud. My brain spirals into okay, don't think, wait, did I remember to buy coffee? Crap, stop. It's exhausting. For years, I assumed stillness meant sitting cross-legged, chasing some mythical blank mind. But after hearing countless stories, I realized I had it all wrong. True stillness isn't about emptiness, it's about making space. It's carving out a quiet corner in your mind where emotions, thoughts, and even doubts can breathe. When we drop the rigid expectations of what stillness should be, fear often rushes in. And let's be real, that fear can be massive. We stay busy, sprinting ahead of our own truth, terrified that if we slow down, reality will tackle us. The kicker: the exhaustion of running only fuels the anxiety we're trying to escape. Society doesn't help either. From childhood, we're scolded to calm down or sit still, yet rarely shown how. If they ever start Busyaholics Anonymous, good luck finding a venue big enough. The irony: the very things we resist, stillness and calm, are often the antidotes we need most in our fast-paced, high-pressure world. The pursuit of calm often gets overshadowed by the relentless grip of anxiety. The very thought of stillness can feel unsettling, like we're wasting time when we should be hustling. But here's the irony: the more chaotic life gets, the more we desperately need moments of quiet. Starting this journey isn't easy, especially when stress has become our default setting. Yet as we commit to these practices, something shifts. The fog of anxiety lifts, revealing clarity about our purpose, our direction, and what truly matters. Dig deep, get deliberate. My own battle with anxiety wasn't just about adding meditation. It meant overhauling my habits. Less coffee, more movement. Fewer late-night scrolling sessions, more walks by the lake. It's funny how we pop sleep aids at night and chug espresso by day, stuck in a cycle that leaves us drained. But stillness, it's the ultimate reset button. Pair it with movement like my daily swims, and suddenly, energy isn't something you chase. It's something you cultivate. Get inspired. A game changer for me was Dr. Harriet Lerner's insight on how we handle anxiety. Some of us go into overdrive, fixing, micromanaging, avoiding our own mess by diving into everyone else's. Others shut down, leaning into helplessness, becoming the problem everyone whispers about. But here's the kicker: these aren't personality flaws, they're survival tactics. Recognizing that was liberating. As a recovering overfunctioner, I've learned to sit with discomfort instead of drowning it in busyness. Underfunctioners: they're not broken, just stuck in a stress spiral. The key is rewriting the script. Get going. Stillness doesn't have to look like a monk's meditation. For me, it's lacing up my sneakers and hitting the trail. No podcast, no distractions. The rhythm of my steps untangles my thoughts better than any journal ever could. What's your version? Maybe it's sketching or sitting with your morning tea, just being. This whole journey started as a tangled mess, much like my early research on wholehearted living. Back then, I kept hearing about meaningful work, but the dots didn't connect. Until they did. Turns out, the threads linking how we think, feel, and act aren't always neat. But when you tug on one, the whole pattern starts to make sense. And that's where the magic happens. Many people talked about feeling a deep sense of purpose in their work, like it was more than just a job, but something they were meant to do. At first glance, it all seemed simple enough. But then came this tangled list of ideas that kept popping up whenever meaningful work was discussed. Natural abilities, spiritual fulfillment, financial stability, dedication, expectations from others, insecurities. Honestly, it felt like trying to assemble a bookshelf with leftover screws. Why were these extra pieces even necessary? Part of me wanted to shrug and say, close enough. But deep down, I knew ignoring them wouldn't work. So I dug deeper, talked to more people, and finally pieced it all together. Here's what I found. We all have unique strengths. When we nurture them and put them to use, life feels richer. But when we ignore them, that's when things get messy. It's not just a missed opportunity, it actually costs us. Without purpose, we battle emptiness, frustration, even grief. And here's the kicker. We often search for meaning out there like it's some distant, divine secret. But the truth, it's already inside us. Using our gifts isn't just fulfilling, it's sacred. Of course, turning passion into purpose isn't always easy. Sometimes what feeds your soul doesn't pay the rent. A lucky few manage to blend both, but most of us juggle pieces until they fit. And no one, not society, not your parents, not some career guide, gets to decide what should matter to you. Meaning is personal. Then there's the real buzzkill, self-doubt. It sneaks in, whispering things like, sure, you're decent at that, but is it really a talent? What if you're the exception, the one person with nothing special to offer? That voice. It's not just holding you back from a fulfilling career. It's sabotaging something deeper, your connection to what truly matters. Because when we doubt our gifts, we're not just questioning ourselves. We're letting fear drown out faith. New detail. One woman I interviewed confessed she'd spent years dismissing her love for baking as just a hobby, until her friends staged an intervention, insisting her pastries were that good. Now, she runs a weekend pop-up bakery and says it's the most alive she's ever felt. So yeah, meaningful work isn't just about what you do. It's about trusting yourself enough to do it. Those sneaky little gremlins love whispering, supposed to, in our ears. It's their favorite weapon for keeping us trapped in boxes of perfectionism, people-pleasing, and proving our worth. You're supposed to chase paychecks, not purpose. You're supposed to pick a real career, your family's counting on it. Work isn't meant to be fun, that's why they call it work. If you were really brave, you'd quit your job tomorrow and chase your dreams. Who needs stability? Pick one, a job that feeds your soul or one that feeds your family. Here's the thing, those gremlins sound convincing, but they're full of hot air. To shut them up, we've got to drag their nonsense into the light. What scares us? What's on our supposed-to list? Who wrote those rules anyway? Gremlins are like toddlers throwing a tantrum. Ignore them and they just scream louder. Instead, try this. Write their garbage down. I know it sounds backward, but putting their nonsense on paper doesn't give them power. It gives you power. Suddenly, you can say, yeah, I see you, fear, but guess what? I'm doing it anyway. So what do you do, besides gremlins, another roadblock to meaningful work? The awkward dance of defining ourselves honestly. In a world obsessed with job titles, the first question we ask and dread answering is, what do you do? For years, I'd cringe when someone hit me with that. My choices. Either shrink myself into a boring elevator pitch or watch their eyes glaze over as I rambled. Now, I just smile and say, how much time do you got? Let's be real, most of us don't fit into neat little boxes. I'm a mom, writer, researcher, storyteller, and about 6 other things before breakfast. So why should I simplify myself just to make small talk easier? I'm done with that. Back in 2009, I met Marcia Albor, author, speaker, coach. Yes, the slashes are intentional. She wrote One Person, Multiple Careers, a game changer about people who refuse to be defined by one job. Think, lawyer, chef, surgeon, playwright, or investment manager, rapper. Her book is packed with stories of people who said screw the script and built careers as unique as they are. That's why I love the slash effect, especially in creative fields where so many people hesitate to own their work. Bonus twist. Ever notice how we light up when someone's answer to "what do you do" surprises us? That's the magic of slashes. They make life more interesting. So next time a gremlin hisses "supposed to," or someone asks, "what do you do?" remember, you're not a label. You're a whole damn story. On ITAT, a recent social media summit, I struck up a conversation with a woman who balanced being a CPA with crafting handmade jewelry. I recognized her instantly. I was actually wearing a pair of her stunning earrings at that very moment. When I complimented her talent, she laughed nervously and brushed it off, saying, "Oh, I'm just an accountant who dabbles in jewelry. It's not a real job." I couldn't help but grin. "Tell that to my ears," I said, pointing to her handiwork. She shrugged, admitting, "I barely make any money from it. I just do it because it brings me joy." At first, her hesitation baffled me, but then I realized I do the same thing. I hesitate to call myself a writer, as if there's some invisible threshold of legitimacy I haven't crossed. But here's the truth. We don't need permission to claim what lights us up. One of my favorite reminders comes from theologian Howard Thurman, a quote I share with my grad students every semester. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. It hits differently now that I understand how vital purposeful work really is. Dig deep, get deliberate. Figuring out what makes work meaningful isn't always straightforward. I had to sit down and define it for myself. Right now, I want my work to spark inspiration, invite reflection, and fuel creativity. That's my litmus test for how I spend my time. Get inspired. Books like Marcy Alboher's One Person Multiple Careers offer brilliant strategies for juggling passions. And Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers nails it. Meaningful work thrives on complexity, autonomy, and seeing effort pay off. For a soul-stirring read, Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist is a yearly must for me. It weaves together purpose, passion, and the magic of chasing what calls you. Get going. Make a wild, impractical list of what excites you. Forget salaries and practicality. What would you do if fear wasn't in the driver's seat? Your day job might already hold meaning. Maybe you've just never framed it that way. So what's your dream slash? What makes you feel fully alive? Dance like nobody's judging. Sing off-key if you want. Love boldly, live fully, because the world doesn't need more people playing small. It needs you, lit up from the dawn of civilization. Laughter, music, and movement have been our universal languages, tools to share joy, sorrow, and everything in between. Yet, in the hustle of daily life, we often overlook how deeply these expressions shape our humanity. Think about it. The contagious giggle that breaks tension, the anthem that turns your commute into a concert, or that uninhibited kitchen dance party after a long day. These moments stitch us together, even when we don't realize it. Barbara Ehrenreich's Dancing in the Streets digs into this idea, calling it collective ecstasy, a primal need to bond through shared euphoria. And honestly, she's onto something. In a world drowning in doom-scrolling and isolation, we crave these bursts of connection more than ever. While researching, I kept circling back to two questions. What makes laughter, song, and dance so universal? And is there magic in their overlap? The answers weren't simple. Sure, we belt power ballads when we're pumped or sway to sad songs after heartbreak, but these acts aren't just about emotion, they're lifelines. Here's the kicker. They whisper you belong. Whether it's an inside joke that cracks up a room or a crowd singing in unison at a concert, that's the glue. Oddly, my biggest lessons on laughter came from studying shame. Real laughter, the kind that heals, isn't about punching down or hiding pain. It's that moment when someone nods and says, "Me too," without words. Anne Lamott nailed it. Laughter is holiness with fizz. And if that's not a reason to crank the music and dance like you mean it, I don't know what is. Bonus detail. Ever notice how a shared laugh can turn strangers into allies? Like when you're stuck in an elevator and someone cracks a joke, suddenly it's not so awkward. That's the alchemy of connection. Music has been the backdrop of my life, from the crackling 8 tracks in my parents' old station wagon to the vinyl records I collected in the 70s, the mixtapes I made in high school, and now the playlists on my laptop. Certain songs hit me like a time machine. One chord can bring back a flood of emotions I didn't even know I still carried. Not everyone obsesses over music the way I do, but there's no denying its power to stir something deep inside us. I remember watching a director's cut of a film where they stripped out the soundtrack for one pivotal scene. Without the swelling score, what had once felt like a heart-pounding moment turned dull and lifeless. It was shocking. I hadn't even noticed the music the first time, but without it, the magic was gone. Whether it's a hymn in a quiet chapel, the national anthem at a ball game, or the perfect song playing at just the right moment, music connects us in ways words never could. Now, if you want to know how happy my family is, just peek into our kitchen on a Friday night. Charlie goes wild for kung fu fighting, while Ellen insists on blasting Ice Ice Baby. Don't judge, we're all about fun, not sophistication. Our tiny kitchen turns into a chaotic dance floor, socks sliding on linoleum, elbows bumping, more like a punk show than a family gathering. And honestly, that's how I like it. Dancing is raw, unfiltered joy, but it's also terrifying for a lot of people. Laughing too hard can make you feel exposed, and singing out loud takes guts, but dancing, that's next level vulnerability. It's like standing there naked, except everyone's watching you move. Some folks only dance behind closed doors or not at all. One friend admitted she catches herself tapping her foot to the TV, then stops, embarrassed, like she's breaking some unspoken rule. But here's the thing, I think we're all wired to move. Not in some polished, dancing with the stars way, but in that instinctive, childlike way where your body just has to respond to the beat. Watch kids when a song comes on. They don't overthink it, they just go. Maybe that's the secret. Stop worrying about looking cool and just let the music take over. After all, life's too short to stand still. Kids don't worry about appearances or judgments, they just dance. Sometimes it's wild, sometimes it's messy, and sometimes they don't even bother with clothes. But no matter what, they move with pure, unfiltered joy. As author Mary Jo Putney once said, "What we love in childhood stays in the heart forever." And if that's true, and I'm convinced it is, then that love of dance never really leaves us, even when we grow up and start obsessing over what others might say. The myth of being cool and in control, there's a line from Almost Famous that sticks with me. The only true currency in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool. And honestly, it's spot on. Laughing until your stomach hurts, belting out a song like you're alone in the car, or dancing like nobody's watching, these are the things that feed the soul. But here's the catch, they also make us feel exposed. For a lot of us, the fear of looking ridiculous is paralyzing. We worry about being labeled awkward, silly, or worst of all, uncool. The internal critic never shuts up, whispering things like, "Tone it down, people are staring. You look like a fool. Get it together." Women often face judgment for being too loud or too much. Countless times I've heard stories of women letting loose, only to be met with a condescending, "Whoa, calm down." Men, on the other hand, fear being seen as out of control. One guy put it bluntly, "Women say they want us to have fun, but if I look like an idiot on the dance floor in front of her friends, no thanks. Easier to just stand there like I don't care." The real issue isn't just about dancing or laughing. It's about the exhausting performance of coolness and control. Trying to be cool isn't about channeling some effortless rebel, it's about armor. We wear it to avoid ridicule, to dodge the sting of not measuring up. And control, it's not always about power. It's about managing how others see us so we can feel like we belong. I grew up in a world where fitting in was everything. Even now, I have to remind myself that it's okay to be silly, to be awkward, to let go. Because the truth is, the moments we're not cool, those are the ones that actually matter. For years, these moments filled me with deep shame. But during my 2007 breakdown, which turned into a spiritual awakening, I finally understood how much I'd lost by always trying to seem cool. I realized my fear of looking ridiculous kept me from trying new things, whether it was yoga or that hip-hop cardio class at the gym. Breaking free from that mindset has been a slow, ongoing process. Even now, I only let myself be truly silly around people I trust, but I'm determined not to pass this fear down to my kids, because if I'm not careful, those old shame triggers creep right back in. Take last year, for example. I had to make a quick stop at Nordstrom to grab some makeup. Feeling frumpy and self-conscious, I threw on my rattiest sweatpants, scraped my unwashed hair into a messy ponytail, and told my daughter Ellen, "We're in and out, no dawdling." On the drive over, she reminded me that her grandma had bought her new shoes, but they were too small. "Can we exchange them while we're there?" she asked. After grabbing my makeup, we headed upstairs to the kids' shoe section. And there they were, a trio of effortlessly chic moms perched on designer boots, flipping their glossy hair while their equally polished daughters tried on sneakers. I was already bracing myself until a sudden movement caught my eye. Ellen. A pop song blared from the nearby children's department, and there she was, my fearless 8-year-old, committing hard to the robot. Arms stiff, legs jerking, completely lost in the moment. Then she froze. The moms were staring. Their daughters were smirking, seconds away from whispering something cruel. Ellen's wide eyes locked onto mine. "Help me, Mom." Normally, my instinct would have been to shoot her seriously. "Stop embarrassing me." Look, but something stopped me. Maybe all the work I'd done, maybe just sheer mom adrenaline. Instead, I grinned and said, "You're missing the scarecrow move." Dropping my wrist like a limp noodle, I flailed my arm around like a deranged windmill. Ellen burst out laughing. Right there in the middle of Nordstrom, we danced like nobody was watching, even though, let's be real, everyone totally was. And you know what? It felt good. Not just for her, but for me. Because in that moment, I chose her over my own fear. And that's a win worth celebrating. I have no idea what the other shoppers thought about our impromptu dance party in the shoe aisle. My focus stayed locked on Ellen in that moment. Here's the hard truth. When we prioritize appearing composed over embracing our messy, authentic selves, we're committing the ultimate self-betrayal. And that betrayal doesn't stop with us. The more we stifle our true spirit, the more likely we are to criticize others for living boldly. We roll our eyes at their enthusiasm, mock their quirks, or worse, shame them into conformity. Whether we mean to or not, we're essentially telling them, "Tone it down. You're embarrassing yourself." There's an old Native American proverb that says, "Our dances are the voice of our hearts." Letting people truly hear that voice takes guts, but what's the alternative? A lifetime spent performing some polished version of yourself while secretly craving the freedom to belt out terrible karaoke or do the sprinkler at weddings. Please. Here's how we fight back. Get intentional. If joy is non-negotiable, and it should be, schedule it like your life depends on it. In our house, post-dinner cleanup now comes with a mandatory dance break. The kids think it's hilarious when I attempt TikTok moves and suddenly scrubbing pans doesn't feel like a chore. Get personal, curate playlists like they're mood prescriptions. Need courage? I've got battle anthems. Need to ugly cry? Cue up Heartbreak Hotel. But nothing beats my unfiltered joy mix. Those songs that make me sing into a hairbrush like nobody's watching, even when they totally are. Get moving, commit to daily ridiculousness. Air guitar while brushing your teeth. Lip sync dramatically in traffic. Watch that clip of goats yelling like humans for the 100th time, laugh until your sides hurt. Let's be real, most self-help advice rings hollow because transformation isn't some 5-step hack. It's showing up messy and scared, whispering "I'm enough," even when your knees are shaking. The real risk isn't looking foolish. It's wasting your one wild life pretending you've got it all figured out. Wholehearted living means waking up and declaring, "Today, I choose me, flaws and all." It's falling asleep knowing your stumbles don't erase your worth. Because here's the secret they don't tell you. The people who matter won't remember your missteps half as much as they'll remember your light looking back. I realized the gifts of imperfection, courage, compassion, and connection weren't just words to me. Before this journey, fear, judgment, and loneliness defined my days. I'd lie awake at night drowning in doubts. What if I drop the ball? Why isn't everyone else as driven as I am? What happens if I stumble and people see? When do I get to stop performing? But the scariest thought wasn't failing. It was losing myself in the act of pretending. That realization hit me like a lightning bolt back in 2006, when my own research flipped my world inside out. For years later, I can honestly say it's been the wildest, most liberating ride of my life. No regrets. Sure, my so-called spiritual awakening felt more like a breakdown at the time. But hey, sometimes the universe has to knock you over with a 2x4 to get you to pay attention. Now, don't let the bookstore shelf fool you. This isn't just another self-help book. It's a rallying cry for a wholehearted revolution. No grand manifestos, just everyday people whispering, I matter, and so does my story. Imagine us flooding the streets, not with picket signs, but with our real, unfiltered lives, stretch marks, heartbreaks, belly laughs, and all. It's about ditching the act and finally admitting, nope, not okay today, and that's okay. It's about letting yourself scream with joy even when your brain warns, don't jinx it. Revolution. Yeah, maybe that sounds intense. But in a world obsessed with filters and facades, choosing to be unapologetically you is downright rebellious. Brace yourself, it'll freak people out. Some days you'll beg for it to stop, others you'll never want it to end. And yeah, you'll feel equal parts fearless and terrified. Welcome to the messy, magnificent middle. Once after a talk, a student lingered awkwardly. No offense, she blurted, but you don't look like a researcher. I grinned. Oh, honey, I'm definitely not your stereotypical lab coat type. Turns out, she was a single mom studying psychology, torn between her passion for research and her advisor's skepticism. We laughed about the absurd image of researchers. Apparently, I was missing the test tubes, the Y chromosome, and a permanent frown. But that conversation, proof that real connection thrives when we ditch the script. She laughed and said, I always imagined researchers as older white guys in lab coats staring at test tubes, not a minivan driving mom analyzing emotions. My path to becoming a researcher was anything but conventional, which honestly makes perfect sense given that I now study human behavior for a living. College wasn't a straight shot for me. I dipped in and out for years, filling the gaps with bartending shifts, backpacking across Europe, and way too many hours on the tennis court. Then, in my late 20s, I stumbled into social work and instantly knew I'd found my calling. I hit the books at community college to boost my grades, and there, between late-night study sessions, I realized I loved teaching and writing just as much as helping people. By 29, I walked across the stage at the University of Texas, Austin with honors, then hustled straight into grad school at the University of Houston. After my master's, I landed a spot in the PhD program. That's when I discovered qualitative research. Forget spreadsheets and p-values. This was about uncovering the stories behind the stats. Grounded theory, my method of choice, was like detective work for human connection. I trained under Barney Glaser, one of its founders, who flew in from California just to mentor me. The goal? Ditch your assumptions and let the data guide you. My first big question was simple. How does human connection actually work? But then, like a rogue subplot in a Netflix drama, shame crashed the party. Turns out you can't study bonding without tripping over the very thing that destroys it. What started as a quick side quest spiraled into an 8-year deep dive. The more I learned, the clearer it became. The people who thrived weren't bulletproof. They embraced their flaws and built resilience like emotional armor. So I pivoted. What were their secrets? How'd they turn vulnerability into strength? Spoiler, the answers were messier, braver, and way more interesting than I ever expected for the past decade. I've been uncovering what it truly means to live wholeheartedly, not through cold statistics or impersonal surveys, but by listening, really listening. My research is built on stories, thousands of them, shared in interviews, handwritten letters, late-night emails, and even scribbled journal entries passed to me like secrets. I've sat across from nearly 1,000 people in one-on-one conversations and group discussions, each voice adding another layer to this ever-evolving puzzle. Therapists, artists, everyday folks, they've all trusted me with their truths, sometimes even handing over paintings or dog-eared diaries as if those pages held answers I might understand better than they did. Then comes the messy, magical part, decoding it all. Picture me, lost in thought, pacing the house with a tower of yellow legal pads, muttering to myself like a detective obsessed with a case. My family wisely clears out during these phases. Apparently, my research trance isn't exactly dinner table friendly. Grounded theory keeps me honest, forcing me to set aside my own assumptions and let the stories guide me. It's painstaking work, sifting through every word, every emotion, hunting for patterns that reveal something real. But here's the kicker. Just when I think I've cracked it, another story comes along, challenging everything. Theories aren't static, they breathe and shift with each new voice. That's the thrill and the frustration. What made sense yesterday might need rethinking today. If you've followed my work, you've seen this dance firsthand. The way ideas evolve, sharpen, or sometimes unravel completely. Staying true to people's stories means staying humble, always ready to question, revise, and sometimes start over. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. There's a raw beauty in this work, in the way strangers' lives become threads in a larger tapestry. Though if you ask my husband, he'd probably just laugh and say, just don't leave the coffee cups on the bookshelves again. For those hungry for the nitty-gritty, the academic backbone of shame, resilience, theory, and beyond, my website dives deeper. But fair warning, once you start catching stories, it's hard to stop.